What's up, guys? We've got a fun live stream tonight. I mean, I hope so. I hope it's going to be fun. But we got a lot of whiskey to taste, and so that is the name of the game. Whiskey Marathon, I think I put on the thumbnail. Yes, Whiskey Marathon. So you can see that we've got a lot of great stuff to taste this evening. It's going to be, I don't know, hopefully 2.5, 3 hours. I mean, we'll see how long we go tonight, right? But we got the new Raconteur Rye batch. We've got a bunch of donated bottles, which, we'll kind of go through some of those. We're going to rapid fire through a lot of things that were not on the thumbnail. Some store picks, just to kind of get an idea of certain single barrel programs from distilleries that I'm less familiar with. We're going to do some side-by-sides, maybe pepper in a few blinds. Tonight I will be spitting quite a bit. Just, lots of barrel picks earlier this month. Like freaking, I don't know. How many barrels did we pick? I think we picked 6 earlier this month. So it's just been a heavy month of consuming alcohol, and so I'm trying to, keep things dialed back a little bit. But if you are just jumping in here, please hit that like button, and let's get the show on the road. I know I didn't get a thumbnail up until probably like 7:45-ish. I was really trying to get it done earlier, but a lot of folks are only going to be notified like once the stream gets started and they start seeing it in their feed. So we'll see the number. It's 83 right now. We'll start seeing that creep up, I would imagine, over the next 10 to 30-ish minutes. All right, yeah. So yeah, like I said, we've got all these like store picks and things to go through. We'll do some of like the lighter bodied stuff first. We've got a 20-year Heaven Hill whiskey to taste, allegedly Heaven Hill. Let's say that. So we will get into that. We'll kind of talk about it. There's actually some really exciting stuff going on with this brand Oakley Spirits, which is kind of cool. And there's a lot to talk about with it, and a lot of stuff that I don't know. So a lot of questions will go unanswered tonight, I would imagine. But that's been an interesting last few days, and I'll tell you why as we kind of get going into the stream a little bit more. What else? Last thing that I can think of as far as me looking across the table is that tomorrow in the Patreon, we are dropping 2 bottles from Short Barrel, which is out of Atlanta. They do source everything. So what we have is, let's start with this one. This is an 11-year MGP bourbon, 36% rye. Love that mash bill. It is 119.2 proof, so it's a great proof for those 36ers. Usually you see those more around 100 to 108-ish. So that's going on sale tomorrow, 115. In the Patreon, pretty Short Barrel, 102 bottles of that one. So we picked a Short Barrel from Short Barrel. And then we also have a higher yield of this, about 168 bottles of this double oaked Rye. It's the only one that's going to have been released thus far from Short Barrel. Char 5, 7 months in a Char 5, which is crazy. I don't even like double oak stuff when we picked this. I thought it was so good. Maple chocolate bacon donuts. So if you're interested, check out the Patreon. The Rye is definitely going to make it to the $10 tier. Could be competitive, probably not super competitive. It's probably going to take a little while to sell out in that tier. But then the 11-year bourbon might go away very fast, if not in the 25 tier, which is sadly sold out. Then definitely in the 10. So there you go. That's kind of the shameless plug. All that good stuff. $5 or $10 a month is what's available on the Patreon. All right, so let's get into it now. What's up, Travis? Yeah, dude. So last week we streamed with Matt Porter, which was fun, but I haven't done a legit solo stream like this, like a typical Thursday night, since December 19th. So it's been a little while. So it's going to be a lot of fun to get back into it. Thank you, Terry. Please hit that like button, guys. He did his hair. No, I had work earlier today. Can't wear a hat to the orchestra unless it's an outdoor rehearsal. Then I can wear a hat. So... Jesse, what's the dollar total for all the whiskey you're tasting tonight? I don't want to add that up. And if Sarah's watching, she doesn't want to hear me add that up. Okay, let's keep scrolling up here, see who's in here. It's good to see everybody. 9:05, right on time. We did it. Tom Lon's elevator music and Cam setting up bottles. The only more iconic duo is Cam and 20-year Heaven Hill. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We have a support group developing in the Discord for us 20-year Heaven Hill fiends who spend too much money on this crap. And it ain't crap. It's the best whiskey like ever. All right. Are we getting discount code CAM for the next Oakley drop? I wish, man, because I could have taken full advantage of that. That would have been nice, huh? Okay, let's dive in. Where are we going to start tonight? Let's start I'm looking at proof of some of these things. I think we start here. So this is going to be a fresh crack. This is a bottle that was donated, or maybe I should say I'm borrowing this bottle from a particular person, and this is the same person. If you hear me talk about donated bottles tonight, I'm talking about the same person. They wish to remain unnamed, but I sincerely appreciate it. Although I don't have a knife, and I want to cut this well. Just kidding, I've got a knife. All right, so let's get into this. This is the Southern Star. It is a single barrel, high rye, straight bourbon. I don't believe this is a store pick or anything like that. I think it's just kind of shelfer type stuff, but maybe they have a shelfer single barrel. It is 90 proof or 45% ABV. I've never had any Southern Star, and I have probably for like a year and a half now, I've heard really, really positive things about Southern Star. I think Paragon maybe is another brand that they've got, or another expression they've got. So let's see what this single barrel high rye is all about. It'll be a good palate warm up too. Oh, wow. Okay. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to take these other two glasses off to the side. In fact, I'll pour these back, I think. Yeah, I'm going to pour these back. I was just taking a look at a couple of samples here. We can return to those another day. I don't know where the other one of these is. That's okay. All right, here we go. Start with this Southern Star. Wow. So 90 proof. Age on this, non-age stated. Looks like, oh, this is distilled in Indiana. Oh. Okay, so this is probably MGP then. All right. The more you know. You know, you got to read the back of the label. This is very kind of like custardy sweet. It's interesting. It's got like for the proof point for 90 proof, it is more elevated both in terms of sweetness and in terms of spice on the profile. It is a high rye bourbon, but when you think 90 proof, you usually have a certain perception in your mind before you go into that. This one has more everything to it, which is nice. But the best thing I could say is it's got this kind of honey, a slightly malty sweetness and kind of custardy quality to it. Yeah, it smells solid. Smells solid. Let's go to the palate. Yeah. Super like cakey sweet. A little bit of like that, those cookies that you get, those like pre-made cookies you get at the grocery store, you know, with like the white kind of cheap-ish icing on the top. Like they're very, very sweet, kind of powdery almost, those pre-made, you know, processed cookies. That's kind of the note that I get on this, mainly on the palate. Slad, I'm here. Has Cam done anything embarrassing yet? Not yet, at least I don't think. Paragon has our own distill. I think I have a sample of Paragon. I'll have to pull that in a second. It's an old sample, so I hope it's not gone bad in the bottle. Okay, here we go. Yeah, the sample's full to the... it's almost full to the top. If you get these things touching the polycone in here, sometimes they can go bad. So I have a Paragon cask strength here as well. Is that the same company? Yeah, Southern Star. All right. So we'll taste that in a second. But let's do this high rye, see it through. I didn't know it was Indiana. It's funny because like it has the sweetness, even though I'm talking about something that sounds cheap and generic, which are those like grocery store cookies, which I don't know. Do those have a name, by the way? like, even though I'm talking about what sounds to be like a generic tasting note, it's actually not bad in here. I'm not saying it in like a cheap or youthful way. In fact, this almost feels like it has decent age to the whiskey, and it's not age stated, but it smells like it's got pretty nice development of its sweeter notes on the nose, and maybe that's just because you add water. Like, sometimes you add enough water to whiskey, you bring it down, you start to open up the sweetness, and so while a lot of people think cask strength is the only way to bottle, I know it's great for enthusiasts, I also think there's something to be said about finding that maximal, you know, that point of maximum sweetness as far as the proof goes. So who knows, you know, what they were thinking here with this one. I think it smells great. And it tastes just like super solid, low-proof MGP, but with great, well-developed sweetness, short to medium type finish. Again, I'm just going to stick with those kind of custardy, sweet, honey-forward notes. The spice in here is like a nondescript, just oaky, white peppery kind of spice. So High Rye does, you know, make itself known, I think, in the drinking experience. But, yeah, very solid. So cool. All right, quick review on that. Again, this is barrel number 00005, and I had no idea that it was MGP, probably. Okay, so let's go on now to this kind of bonus, which I didn't expect to taste, but I'm glad I'm finally doing it. Oh, wow. So Southern Star Paragon cask strength. Now, this sample was sent to me probably a year plus ago at this point. It's 121.3 proof. What's up, Bourbon Bill? Cheers, everyone. Cask strength is the only way to bottle max flavor or get the hell out. I don't disagree with you. Loft House Cookies, says Stuart. Is that what I'm... That sounds like a brand. Loft House Cookies. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's totally it. I had no idea. Because it was the mother's maiden name of David Stone who started the cookie company. Okay. Well, there you go. But I'm talking about the really cheap grocery store version. A very special episode. Who else is in here? I'm missing people. What's up, Phil? Way to go, Cam, helping Oakley sell out. Just try the EHT Barrel Proof 13. Tastes in between 12 and 11. Phil, I'm excited to get into that tonight. Yeah, there you go. Terry said Loft House. Nick, good to see you, man. Starting off not with Eagle Rare. We're just getting into it, man. We're just ripping the Band-Aid off. All right. This Paragon is just different on the nose. Like, we think of craft whiskey, and the Southern Star, I believe, is North Carolina. You think of a certain thing with craft whiskey, right? Like, often you think of heaviness because many of them are using pot stills. I'm not sure if they are. Doesn't smell like a pot-stilled whiskey. But you think of heaviness, whether it's from the still or from the grains or from the smaller barrels or any combination of those. And so you get funk and you get, you know, farminess and earthiness and that kind of thing. I don't get any of that on this Paragon. This is like very, very lifted. It has like it's like you took man, this is a weird one. I'm in like lemon lime territory right now, okay? So it's like lemon lime and a little bit of like an algae, like mossy, you know, pond water, but not, that sounds really bad. It's not like that, but it's like very lemon lime forward with a little bit of this like, yeah, this watery algae mossy thing. Oh, it's so hard to, and it smells like, I can smell a grain, but it doesn't smell like rye to me. This smells almost, yeah, I guess, I mean, maybe like wheat or some other kind of grain. Huh, weird, different. I like that it's different, and I like that it's not necessarily off-putting. Sample is slightly tainted. You can taste a little bit of the plastic cap on the palate. You couldn't smell it, though. That's what you get. Guys, word of advice, if you send sample bottles to people, it's not you being stingy. Get it to the shoulder and don't go any higher than the shoulder. Sometimes I get sample bottles that are completely touching the plastic cap. You'd be shocked at how quickly those will go bad. The whiskey's more than likely just eating at the plastic, and it's tainting the whiskey. So a little bit of that in there. But a good drinking experience. Tastes young, but I think as far as craft whiskey goes, that's very solid, especially the way that it drinks. Joe, we can talk about that if you want, bro. I don't know if you guys saw all this going on Facebook. I saw it on Facebook, so then I found the video online. Tuning in tonight to see if there are any bourbon YouTubers caught lying to viewers. Let's see. Listen, people in the Discord know that I'll, unfortunately, for better or worse, put my money where my mouth is, even if it's too much money and it's super irresponsible. Andrew Campbell, thank you. 5 new memberships to the Drums and Drams YouTube channel. Thank you. Bourbon Bill, no. There's going to be a whole host of 20-year Heaven Hill talk on the channel. Excuse me, in the coming days. I mean, we are going to talk Oakley tonight. We're not going to get too deep into comparisons because I've got other barrels coming right now of Oakley. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Rizzle D, ever notice cloudy clusters in any of your non-chill filtered bottles? Sure, yeah. Sometimes you see that, like the flock or whatever they call it. It's kind of like these little, almost like white strips. I've seen those most frequently actually in Weller Foolproof picks. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got I actually have a barrel sample from Bardstown Bourbon Company. We just picked a bourbon, and the sample from the barrel's cloudy. It was so cold outside, and we pulled it, and it was such a short barrel that all these solids got up into the whiskey thief. And so when they filled the sample bottle up, it's just super cloudy. So it's pretty gnarly right now. It's not going to be that way when they bottle it, but absolutely. What's up, Ryan? Whiskey Tube is full of shit. P.S. Rack Rye 3 goes on sale Friday, February 7th at noon. We're going to get into Raconteur Rye, Ms. Kiss. We'll get into that here in a bit. Probably sooner than later, actually, just given the... What's the proof on that? Okay, 118, so it's no slouch. Brian, I've got Oakley if you want it, man. You just tell me. I'll send you some stuff. Matt, I'm just trying to, not drink too much whiskey. I'm going to be spitting some and swallowing some. Cue the jokes. I know. All right. Cool. I'll take one final sip of this Southern Star. Very solid. I need to pick up a fresh bottle of this at some point. And I think, to me, I want to taste through some of the Southern Star stuff. I don't know what their other expressions are in their line. But I think, based on this sample, I mean, the other one is sourced MGP. You can't really judge based on that. But based on this sample, I think there's a lot of really good potential there. All right, what do you want to get into next? Let's do this, guys. What are we going to do? You help me out. We can go Old Dominic. I've got a couple Old Dominic picks. We're not going to go E.H. Taylor yet. We got to get the palate still warmed up, get a few more folks in here. I go Old Dom. I could go Raconteur Rye. I've got these 2 Nashvilles. These are the Minick top 5. The same batches, these 2. We can go with those. We could go into this what is this? Not J. Regan. This is Leaper's Fork, I think is how you say it. No Oakley now. Proof Casket Salesman. This is a 113.2. And it's for a comparison to this, what is it called? Peter Hart, which is supposedly the same distillate. All right, let's go Rack Rye. Let's get into Raconteur Rye. Okay, so here's the deal on Raconteur Rye. Batch 1, I loved Batch 1. It had this really delicate thing to it, and let's put this center stage here. Had this really delicate thing to it the Mizunara added this creaminess. That's the best way I've been able to describe the Mizunara Impact. It adds an elevated sweetness, but it's elevated sweetness in a gentle way, kind of a little like strawberry cream type thing on the top. It's just a very interesting finish. And Raconteur, I think this brand, I guess we would call it a brand, right? This collaboration, let's say, plus the rabbit hole bottle, which was stupidly priced. Is that the one that started with an N? Nevalier, I don't know how to say it, right? I think it was a 16-year bourbon finished in Mizunara, something like that. It had crazy stats. I love that whiskey. It was just way too expensive. But between that bottle and these Raconteur Ryes, I feel like, come to understand and appreciate Mizunara in a way where I'm like, we need more Mizunara finishes on the market, actually. I think it's hard to work with. I think it's probably expensive, which is understandable, why we don't see maybe a little bit more of it. All right, so it sounds like we might go from here into the Minic stuff. All right. So this is 118.2 proof. It's 8 years old. I'm allowed to say this, I believe, that it's from Bardstown Bourbon Company. I hope I am. I think that's pretty well known, though. This is a Kentucky rye, a Kentucky 95.5, I do believe. And I don't remember all the stats from this particular release. Let's see if I can get a press release real quick. Oh, here we go. On Bourbon Outfitter, out of stock because it's going to go on sale soon. We are alerted to a special lot of 8-year-old 95.5 rye distilled in Bardstown from BB Co. Don't want to read the tasting notes yet. Careful combination of both straight and cask finished whiskey. So it sounds like reblended at the end. So there you go. That's why it's called Ms. Kiss. It's just got a delicate kiss of the rich woodiness and layered qualities of Japanese Mizunara. Okay, there we go. Yeah, and right away on the nose, you get the same kind of Mizunara sensation that I was talking about, that elevated creamy sweetness. That is totally what jumps out of the glass first, sits on the top. Now, I'm probably going to have to pull... I'm not going to pull batch 2 Raconteur, probably. I'm probably going to pull batch 1 because this doesn't remind me in very many ways of batch 2. Batch 2 was super intense. That's why they called it brazen, I have to imagine. It had a lot of those kind of like Dr. Peppery cola type notes. I loved batch 2. Did really well for me in blinds with the Bourbon Junkies when we shot a video over there. But this feels a little more sweeter and more delicate. And like, I don't know. There's a word, but I can't think of it. But let's say delicate. Delicate sweetness. Now, the way that the rye's coming through underneath that Mizunara cask and that sweetness on the top, it's also a more gentle and sweeter rye whiskey just in and of itself, I think, as compared to an MGP 95.5. Those MGPs... probably for batch 1 and 2 Raconteur, but especially batch 2, there's a lot more spice, a lot more herbal qualities. This does still have some herbal sensation to it, but it's much more kind of interwoven with the sweet notes of this rye, and that tracks. Like, I've had some other Bardstown 95.5 ryes, and they do feel in many ways as intense as an MGP, but you subtract some spice and add some sweetness, I would say. All right. Soft up front. Super soft. But right behind it... Okay, hang on. Wow, so I expected this to... I'll be completely honest with you. From just the very front of the palate, I thought this was going to be kind of flat. But as it rolls back... Wow, it's super creamy. Like, mouthfeel on this... I got to get batch 1. This one's a little. This is a little bit of an enigma to me. I think maybe. Let me get batch 1 out first before I say that. Like, maybe it's the most integrated of the 3. Like, batch 2 was, the whiskey was just ballsy, and nuance to some degree went out the window with batch 2, and that's kind of why I liked it, you know? Batch 1 was definitely felt like the more like constructed whiskey experience. So let's see how this compares to batch 1. And now batch 1 is, I mean, literally 1% ABV higher. So very close. Yeah, the difference is... Okay, so this showcases the difference actually really well. They both have a similar... They both have like a similar intensity, just ever so slightly less intense for the batch 3. But I am really noticing now those kind of cola notes that you get on... I wouldn't have even said that you get these on batch 1, but when you compare them side by side, that difference comes to the forefront a little bit more. Batch 2 I thought was the cola bomb. Now I get it on batch 1 because it's sitting next to batch 3, which is something that's so much more lighter and sweeter and more kind of delicate, like I said. Is there a right answer? I don't think so. This is really gonna be a preferential thing. But I would imagine that if I put batch 2 here, it's going to be night and day, absolutely, between that and batch 3. So let me taste batch 1. Do a quick sip of this. Right away, spice. MGP spice right away. You can just tell that kind of classic 95.5 profile. Ooh. Sorry, headache. Something going on. Jeez. Probably some jaw clenching or something. Yeah. Anyways, batch 1. Jeez. Sorry, guys. Having a moment. Maybe it's a lack of sleep thing. Yeah. Let's go to batch 3. It's the hair gel hardening. No, I clench my jaw a lot, like when I'm stressed, and I've been stressed as crap recently, and so sometimes you get pain like up the side of your head, you know, and it just like pauses you. Just pauses you. What's up, Rare Bird? Wow, so yeah, listen, if you want a sweeter rye, batch 3 is one for you. It really leans away from that traditional MGP 95.5 spicy profile, and it totally goes a different direction for me. Wow. Now, I mentioned earlier a little lemon lime note in the Southern... Was it the Southern Star? Yeah, I guess it must have been. And it must have been... It was the Paragon. So there was a little lemon lime note in that. I'm kind of picking that up as well on this batch 3. And I feel like that is kind of a hallmark of some of these Bardstown 95.5s. All right, so I think what is the most impressive thing to me about batch 3 is how long the flavors last on the palate, and they don't feel like they're dependent on the spice of the whiskey. So what I mean is soft up front, everything starts to develop and ramp up mid-palate. And as it as as you're going through the experience, and you can tell that there's like length to the palate, and it's continuing to go on, the spice kind of starts to fade, but the flavors are lingering the entire time. And I don't know if that's from the base whiskey or if that's from the finishing cask. They are brought together very, very well, I think, very balanced. And again, I think this is going to be for somebody that wants a sweeter rye whiskey. I personally, I like a spicy rye, and so for me, my preference between these is still probably going to be batch 2. I think batch 2 is just, it's just in your face and ballsy, and I love that about it. Batch 3 would be more of a mood pour for me, and it would be kind of in the same vein as batch 1, where it's like, I want something a little more delicate. Now, this one being the most delicate, the most sweet, batch 1 being somewhere in the middle of 2 and 3. Devin. No, I was worried there for a second, but you start to get a little panicky, and you can freak yourself out, right? Does it drink its proof point? Says Rich. I thought 2 did. I think this probably drinks under its proof point. Actually, I think it's a very easy sipper. But in a different way, not in the fact that it has a short finish, which, again, if you judge this whiskey based on the very front of the palate, just the entry, like, you would think that it's going to be way more relaxed than it is. The development is what's impressive, and then the fact that the flavors linger for so long even after the spice is gone. Like, it's just a different style to me than batch 2 especially. David says that's one of the things we're trying to do, keep these batches different and progressing. And I think, you're probably hitting, like, you'll have repeat customers on these batches, of course, but I think if, like, this is just my interpretation, but let's say that other reviewers say the same thing I'm saying. I don't know. I haven't watched any other reviews or talked to anybody yet. If they say the same thing I'm saying, maybe some people like batch 2 would choose to pass on 3, and I would understand that. If they know they want something like batch 2 and they know they don't want a sweeter rye, fair. But I think you're also going to attract a new audience of people that want a sweeter rye. So, it's just like anything else. But it's good that I would rather see with a kind of like micro releases like this, like super small batch things. I'd probably rather see the bigger swings in the profile, and then have the press release and the discussion from from Rarebird, is what I'm saying, guys, be about why it's different and how it's different, as opposed to like an Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, when there are differences, but they don't like openly discuss that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Pretend Rarebird isn't here. Tell if it's a good value at its price, $130. Listen, on paper, and I've said this about Raconteur Rye before, on paper it feels like, when I see 7-year, this is an 8-year, when I see 7 and 8-year rye, I'm always like, oh, if I see 7, 8-year bourbon at this price point, I get that way too. But to me, it's like the proof was in, let's say for batch 2, right? I would have said the same thing about batch 2. It was, I think, a 7-year. Yeah, 7-year. And then you put it in a blind with like murderous rye whiskeys, and it performs really well. And you're like, well, stats be damned, this is really good whiskey. So I think the true test for me on this batch 3 would be to put it in some blinds. You know what I mean? To like really see how this thing stacks up. I don't know that I ever blinded batch 1 with a bunch of things. I think I've only blinded batch 2. And for me, because I know I love that profile, it's a killer in blinds. It's a killer. David hides. That's funny. Trying to think of other Bardstown ryes, cask strength. Who else is sourcing cask strength Bardstown ryes? I know Rare Character had some. I got Matt Porter did a pick with them, and I want to say it was $100 maybe. That was a freaking awesome rye. I think it was 6 years old maybe. But yeah, Jason says Mizunara is costly. Yeah, I've heard it's very costly. And so you got to factor that in too. You got to factor a lot of things into it. I think it's an even value, right? Like, I'm not chomping at the bit to pay more for it. And that's purely based on stats right now. And also the fact that this is not my preferred profile of the Raconteur batches. Mine is just batch 2. I just love how intense batch 2 is. That's just me, you know. It's a flavor monster, and this is a little bit more of a sit down, spend some time with it type sipper. So I hope that's like worthwhile feedback for anybody thinking about this. As far as like, you know, how your palate aligns with mine, especially what you thought of batch 1 Raconteur. This is going to be an even more delicate and sweeter version of batch 1. So I'm trying to give you as many data points to think about what this profile is. I'm trying to rack my brain about other things profile-wise that compare to this. But I can't think of too many right now, which is a check in the uniqueness box for this whiskey. Like that lemon liminess, a little bit of that I get in here, almost reminds me of some Nashville Barrel Company. There was one that was an 11-year rye, and it was MGP, but it had that lemon lime note. They called it the Thirst Quencher. It was a seal box pick that I tasted when I was down there with Brian, Abandoned Bourbon. This has a little bit of that lemon liminess underneath the creamy sweet notes. Morgan, I own batch 2. Happy I bought it. It did get killed by TKOs and blinds this year. Probably unfair comparison. If Ryan Alvarez is still here. Unfortunately, his TKO was slotted very poorly in the blind that I did with was it with Dan or Sean or both? I can't remember. But it was slotted poorly, and it did not beat this Raconteur batch 2. Sorry, Ryan. But man, the more you drink this, the sweeter it gets. The more vanilla you get, the more of that creamy sweetness. Do one teeny little sip of batch 1. I might like batch 3 over batch 1. But you're just comparing kids at this point. So, you know, you can't really do that. I like them all. I'm going to be interested to see what other people say about batch 3, if they also think that it's a sweeter version. Interested to see what David thinks. Like, I don't know that I've read anything about this, and I do that on purpose. Like, I don't seek out other people's tasting notes until I taste it myself. So maybe I should do like a Raconteur blind and see what happens. I feel like I could pick them out, but also maybe not. You never know. All right. So thank you, man, for sending me that bottle. And it's one that I think, even as I've sipped it right now, it's kind of evolving. When you're talking about finished whiskey, you got to give it some air. So as that bottle gets a little bit more air into it, as this glass has, I think it's going to continue to change. But I think a Raconteur blind is finally in order. We got 3 of them. We can actually do like a real dedicated blind. But I just like how long the sweetness goes on the palate. Mizunara is cool. I'll keep saying that. All right, let's keep it moving. Where are we gonna go? SLB loved batch 3, so I wonder if they prefer a sweeter rye profile. Just out of curiosity. Molly, that's funny. All right, let's go on to some of these Nashvilles now. Let's see what this is all about. I'm going to just reuse some glasses. And guys, I'm not too plugged into SLB as far as their palates go, so I don't know what their preferences are like. I wonder what they said just about each of the Raconteur batches. Because here's the thing, guys. Like, everybody has, and this is something just to note, like, every one of us whiskey tube people, you know, and all of you, and just everybody has their own preferences. So it wouldn't make sense if you throw somebody 3 drastically different products, maybe not drastically, but 3, you know, markedly different products, and they said, I love all 3 of those the exact same. You should have preferences. So for me, mine's batch 2, and if SLB is 3, I could see them liking 1, actually, maybe a little bit over 2. I don't know. And of course, like, listen, you want me to be honest with you? Having Rarebird in here right now as I talk about this whiskey, you do feel a little bit of like, oh man, you know, I don't want to be this or that. You do feel that. Like, some people will say, oh no, I would give 100% honest no matter the situation. Some people say, and some people will absolutely just say whatever needs to be said in the moment to whoever needs to hear it. There is that. Like, you do feel that. David and I aren't, like, we've never met in person. We've talked online. We're not like best friends, but you want to be respectful even if you're being critical. You don't want to just say, blah, blah. And I used to kind of be that way about things. So what I'm saying is, like, there are a lot of factors at play when you talk about these things. And so I just always want to be honest, but I also want to be tactful when I'm being honest. That's not just specific to this situation. It's like when I'm talking about a Magnus blend and Nancy's in the chat, it's like, you do feel that. It is a thing. And I think the more you do it, the more you, if you're going to criticize something, you can do it in a tactful way without attacking the product or attacking the people that made it, or, you know. And so that brings us to the Whiskey Tube video that dropped earlier today that everyone's been talking about. No, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that right now. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I wouldn't expect every fan of Batch 2 to love Batch 3. They're different worlds. Totally. I think Batch 3 is probably for, like, more sophisticated palates. You know what I mean? Like, Batch 2 is just like, give me that. Yeah. And I'm unabashedly somebody that's just like, give me the flavor bomb. No, but I do absolutely love more delicate pours. I mean, like, for instance, Michter's 10 Rye. Such a shame the proof that it's bottled at, but God, give me that every day of the week. Lynn says, I've only ever had batch 1, so it's my favorite. Okay. Wow, the color difference. Is that really... Oh my God, that's crazy, the color difference on these. Bourbon Bill says, good news for me, I can be as harsh as I want. No one from the distillery ever comments. I mean, you know, it's, again, I'm a broken record using this phrase. It's like anything else. There are always incentive structures to every industry, you know? And the people whose palates I trust are the people that, even in the face of potentially making someone mad or disappointing them, let's say, find a way to be honest always, but still tactful. Like, those are the people that I tend to trust. And so that's why I kind of want to base my philosophy around that, right? The people that I don't trust are, first and foremost, when people are paid by distilleries to say things, which that's, again, less of an issue here on YouTube and more of a kind of Instagram, TikTok type thing. Or if they're sent things from distilleries and they're not paid, which happens a lot. Like, most of the time when people are sending you things, they're not paying you. That's just how it is. But they send you things and you never want to say anything bad about it. You never want to critique it or even just say, it's really good, but it's not my thing. People that are like, this is the best thing ever every single time, I also don't trust those people. So... But I like it. I like the fact that Raconteur can talk about the differences in batches because it's a small operation, probably like literally the smallest type of operation, you know, as opposed to like the big boys, like even Stag. It's like, put out a Stag Junior batch and tell us why it's different or why it's the same. Here we go. Here's a question. Burt's Bees, have you had any of the... By the way, 192 people in here. It's awesome. So thank you for being here. Hit that like button. We've got a lot of stuff still to go to, get through. 20-year Heaven Hill, EH Barrel Proof Batch 11. These Nashville Barrel Companies, which were in Fred Minnick's top 5. Some other store picks, all sorts of stuff. Brian, on another note, I heard these are the best Nashvilles ever made. Here's what I'll say. The rye smells damn good. Very, very, very good, the rye smells. I don't know what the age of this rye is. Color's dark. The bourbon, not my jam. I don't know how to, like, totally talk about this bourbon. It's just weird, kind of all the way around. Smells young, I think, is the best, like the first comment to make on this bourbon. This is the Connected Spirits bourbon, 120.4 proof. This is the exact batch, I do believe, that Fred ranked. It's distilled in Kentucky. It smells young. It just smells young. Like, there are some darker sweet notes in here. Like, maybe some combination of like that, like a brown sugar and a sugar in the raw packet kind of note. Yeah, like maybe the top of a creme brulee, which is usually a more positive note when I use it. But right now, it feels almost a little bit like unsupported sweetness. Kind of nutty-ish. I don't know. It's pretty nutty in the palate. Very cinnamon peanut forward. And it has a lot of that sweetness behind it. That super sugary sweetness. The palate, well, the nose doesn't necessarily set me up for the palate. There's almost like a purple, like, you know, it's like a bubble gum, but like a purple bubble gum, I guess. Kind of like that is the darker sweetness I'm getting in the background. Now the nuttiness is starting to come out on the nose. I'd say this is peanut. We could call it a little more of a peanut butter than a peanut shell. Very beamy. Beamy or Young Heaven Hill on the palate. But almost like that profile has been put into, you know, if you ever finish something in used barrels and you get that extra oomph to the whole thing, you don't really add flavor notes necessarily, but you just kind of add breadth to it when you put it in another used barrel. Like, it kind of has that sensation to it. And I don't just say that because the rumors are, you know, that Nashville's rebarreling stuff and this and that. I don't know what is true or not about any of that, but it's good. That's not a special bourbon to me. That's like a very average, you know, probably for the price point, like a good value, I guess. I think it was $60-$70, something like that. But it's not my preference, you know. That's so I don't see how that would creep into like a top 5 for me. Now, blind things can happen, and also keep in mind, Fred put Larceny last year, 2 of them in his top 5. Those are nutty profiles. Those are spicy profiles. This is kind of the same thing. So that could make sense. But that one's, I don't think there's any reason to hunt these things down. This blue label right here. That's just me. Yeah, they crossed out Indiana and put Kentucky on the bottle. These were affordable, Lynn. These were very affordable bottles. Now this rye, though. Holy shit. The rye smells old, and I don't know if it is, but the color is much, much darker, and I wonder if there's not older whiskey in here, because the way it smells is it has that kind of 9 to 12 year MGP rye smell to it. And I've been on and on about this tonight. I don't know if I'm just on a freaking lemon lime kick or I've gotten three whiskeys in a row with this. This is strong lemon lime Gatorade. And just like the Sealbox 11-year pick, that thirst quencher, this has that note. It's screaming, at you. But it's dark. It's got those kind of root beery notes underneath it. The thing is, when you think about some of the 11 to 12-year MGP ryes that have hit the market this past year, the 95.5s, the high proofers that I love, a lot of people out there are digging on them. Southern Collective's gotten them, River Roots, just a bunch of places have gotten those. Those have more of a like minty, maybe pepperminty rye character than this. This is somehow it has the depth of those ryes and those dark root beery notes, but at the same time it doesn't have with it the mintiness of those ryes. So it comes off dark but very rich and sweet with that lemon lime that kind of creeps up the middle. That's like the racing stripe of the bourbon, you know what I mean? And then everything else around it is all of that supporting darker notes. Oh, jeez. That's so good. Now, oh, geez, that's so good. Kind of the same sugary sensation to it, though, that I talked about, like the elevated sugary sweetness that the bourbon had. The rye has it on the finish, too. Brown, it's got that brown buttery type thing that I love on older MGP ryes. And I wouldn't call dill on this. No, not really. So, is this a top 5 whiskey of the year? Probably not. For me, I'm talking. Not, anybody else could have this anywhere else on their lists. For me, probably not. Is this probably the best value rye whiskey that was released last year? Because I think it was $70. Hang on, let me check the price on this. I've got to be sure. This would be I want to look up Connected Spirits. Order confirmed. The bourbon was 75. The rye was 75. Listen, that is the best value rye whiskey probably last year. I can't think of anything else. Yeah, Incognito, you caught that. I couldn't remember why that was in my head, but that was in my head. Slad. Oh my God, that's funny. That's so good. It's funny, though, because it's like part of me wants that to be a little higher proof. It's only 112.4. Part of me would love to see this at 130, But then I also really appreciate the balance of this whiskey, the way it is. And I don't know if that's cask strength or not. It doesn't say, I don't think. Although, if they proofed it down, it would be interesting to leave it at, 0.4 on the proof. I would think it's probably cask strength. So yeah, it's like on one hand, I love the balance. On the other hand, I'd love it to be amped up. But where it is makes it crushable. And again, at $75, I know this batch is sold out. I probably wouldn't hesitate if they put out more batches of this to just buy this and buy 2 of them. It's, just at that price point, that's crazy. I don't know how they get those flavors at that price point. I just don't know. Now, if that's $150, it's a totally different story. Totally different story. But those darker MGP rye notes, those are the things I love about MGP ryes. I like them a lot more than Dill Forward MGP Ryes. Bourbon Bill, think Sag 9, Bullet 12, so many better ryes for value. Compared to this, though, I mean, Bullet 12, this will take an axe to Bullet 12 and just murder it. Sagamore 9, I haven't had 9 actually. 8, I mean, Sag 8 is really good whiskey. So comparable probably, but also price-wise, I think the Sagamore's more expensive. Josh, I can get the Jack single barrel proof rye for $49.99. Yes, but the profile on that is so different. And so for me personally, I'm not a big Jack Daniel's profile person. I can really appreciate those ryes for what they are, but there's never a day that I go to my shelf and reach, like I've got one right there. I never reach for that bottle. I love that bottle. I appreciate that bottle, but I don't find myself reaching for it because it's just not my profile. So you can tell me it's $50 all day, but I would still rather buy this at $75 only because of that. But point taken, for sure. Mike, I mean, listen, okay, all right. We could talk pricing if you want. Prices have crept up so much that $75 is like the new entry point for your Friday night pour. You know what I mean? If you want to think about the old Reddit, you only need 5 whiskeys. There's like the everyday drinker. I think maybe the next one's the Friday night pour. 75 is kind of the barrier to entry these days, unfortunately. I mean, yeah, you can find good $60 stuff, but I'm just saying from a quality perspective, that makes this a budget whiskey to me at $75. If your budget's $50, then this is out of your budget. You got to find a budget $50 bottle. You know what I mean? But there's no more, like, listen, the days of $25 and $30 epic bottles, like those are gone. So yeah, Andrew's right. This is the problem with lists. It's pure subjectivity. It really is. Doing a massive double blind is a different story, but still it's subjectivity at the end of the day. You're right. All right, so let's move on. Super support this. Nah, pass on this for me. Barry. So Barry mentions Hard Truth. Yeah, that's a good call. Different profiles. Certainly different ages. I can't imagine that the NBC that I just had was 5 years old, like the Hard Truth would have been. But that's a great comparison. Totally different profiles, but great comparison. And again, I would take a Hard Truth at $65 or $60 over a Jack, again, just because I'm not the biggest Jack fan. I agree, Bourbon Bill. All that NDP 12-year MGP last year was killer. I agree. There's still some of it floating around. We got 2 more of those coming from River Roots. And they beat the crap out of the 3 that we've already picked. Or 4, I guess we've picked. So I will pick those ryes as long as they exist. I think they're so good, and so many of them are special. Oh, Mike just cracked the thirst quencher that I was talking about. The Gatorade note on it is wild. Whiskey Habit. I love how Bullet puts out a 12-year rye for $50 and people love to rag on it. I don't understand when people rag on Bullet 12. I actually had a video, or I think it was a short that I made, and I never edited that short. It's still just a raw file, but it was like a 60-second short talking about 2 budget ryes. And I think Bullet 12 was like the main rye I was talking about, because I think it's a great option at that price point. Where else are you going to get a 12-year rye for $50? It is low proof. That's okay. Phil, unfortunately, $50 budget whiskey means you're watching the wrong channel. I know, like, I can take a lot of crap about, being out of touch with prices or whatever, I know I'm accustomed to spending a lot of money, but I do think like I would rather have one good $75 bottle of whiskey than 3 mediocre $30 or 2 mediocre $40 bottles. I would rather have one good $75 bottle and spend more time with it. All right, let me keep scrolling down here, guys. Amy, thank you for the super chat. Much love to you all. Support the channel. Click the like. Check out Patreon. Show Cam some love. Be kind to your fellow creatures. Thank you, Amy. Burt's Bees, 11-year Brook Hill Rise. Yeah, mixed results for me on those. I think 3 were outstanding and 3 should have been bottled as not Brook Hill, probably something in a lesser line. So those were very hit or miss for me. Went and Las Palmas, I'll always give them credit for those two because those rocked my world. Great single barrels. 2 very different profiles between the two. And then it was kind of a crapshoot from there. And I haven't had any of the newer ones. I don't seek out the Brook Hill stuff because I think it's wildly overpriced. But they have the brand power to do it, and like I get it. But I don't seek that stuff out so much, especially because as far as the bourbons go, no one really knows where they're coming from. Slad, if someone made a high-proof version of that Bullet 12-year rye, I could tell you a little secret, but I can't say it right now. I can't believe you hated on the Jag. I don't hate on the Jag. I think it's a great whiskey. It's just not my preferred profile. Those are 2 different things. All right. Let's keep going. Let's do a little detour into the land of Old Dominic, which is a land I'm unfamiliar with. I've got 2 store picks here of Old Dominic. And I've heard a lot of talk about them, I don't know, over the last year and a half from a few different people. Travis talked to me about them. I've had some samples from him. So I'm going to revisit. I know I've already tasted a little bit of Old Dominic here on the channel. And the one that I really liked, oddly, was like I think it was 88 proof, like a lower proof version. Brett, you had the Hazmat Brook Hill. That Hazmat Brook Hill was very good. Very, very good. I don't know what it was, though. You hear so many conflicting things about the sources of Brook Hill and stuff. All right, so one cool fact about Old Dominic, I've never actually seen this on the back of these bottles. Barrel entry proof's 110. That's great. Low barrel entry proof. So what I have here, again, courtesy of someone who donated these to the channel, wishes to remain unnamed. Thank you. I have 125 proof, 6-year, and this is low rye mash. So it's the turkey mash bill, 751312. This is their own distillate. This is an Old Dominic's own distillate, 751312, 6 years, 125.34 proof, picked by the Memphis Bourbon Society. The other one I have is a high rye, 52 corn, 44 rye, very high rye, 4 malted barley, also 6 years old, 123.6, so just a teeny bit lower proof. Yeah. So let's do the low rye first. Tom, yeah, these are the same ones. Clay, did you end up getting one of the 12-year Beastmaster Ryes? Yes, and mine shipped today too. I'm so stoked to get that. Thank you for the hookup on that, man. All right, I'm going to just quickly nose them both. Huh. So I have smelled and tasted both of these Old Dominic picks one other time. We were pre-gaming kind of the night before the Bardstown Bourbon Company pick. Tom was there. Some other guys from the Patreon were there. I don't know who all's in the live chat right now. Austin's here. Joe's probably not here. He was under the weather today. Chris, I don't know if Chris is in here right now. Anyways, we had a great group. And And so we tasted these the night before the Bardstown pick, and I was like not the biggest fan of them. They smell much better right now than I remember, which is why I'm saying this, because we had a table full of crazy pours. And I don't know if it was just the comparison between everything, but I was like, I don't know about these old Dominics. These smell much better right now. So, low rye. Okay, so I smell some youth, 6 years old, fine. But there's a lot of like fresh berry notes to it. And for 6-year bourbon, what I would attribute that to, if I was just like purely throwing a dart, and trying to hit something, maybe it's the barrel entry proof being 110, because oftentimes you get those low entry proofs. That it can happen from that. It can also happen from being a sweet mash product as well. You can get some of these more fresh fruit notes at younger ages. There's obviously so many factors, but maybe that's what it's coming from. Yeah, it's like, it's kind of sort of melony almost. Even with the low rye, there's like citrus and melon coming out. And then with some fresh berries, you can really, it's just so fruity. It's remarkable. But it does still smell young. Kind of a crispy caramel note to it almost. Huh. All right, now onto the high rye. High rye is more elevated vanilla, but also more elevated grain youth, I think. Less fruity on the high rye. More standard vanilla chocolates. But it does have a cooling menthol thing from probably that high rye percentage. So I think on the nose, I like the power of that high rye, but I think the profile of this low rye is awesome. So for me, the nose is going to go to the low rye. Wow, 200 in the chat. 205. Cool. Thanks for being here. All right, let's go low rye on the palate now. So the palate is where the youth really comes through. The corn grain, there's almost a nuttiness to this. It's like mixed nuts. You can clip that. But there's a little nuttiness, corn grain, kind of that crispy caramel note that I was talking about. It's much less fruity on the palate than it was on the nose. I love the nose on this. Yeah, and you go back to the nose and you still melon and fresh berry. Then you go palate. Slightly malty. What's the malt percentage? Okay, 12%. And the high rye, I think, is only 4. Yeah. Travis, they only charcoal filter it through a small box, so don't think like Jack Daniels. Okay. I didn't even think about the filtration. Yeah, none of that bothers me. Although, maybe when I'm saying crispy caramel, that the crispiness that I'm saying maybe is like a texture from the filtration. But I don't know. It's not even as like charcoal feeling as Jack Daniels is. So if it's even less than that, which is way less than George Dickel, then I'm cool with it. Like I just don't notice it, I guess, about this. So much more vanilla on the high rye. Weird. And this is like lemon cake. Yeah, you can definitely taste the rye in that. It's super lemony. A little too lemongrass, actually, for me. Like, it's getting a grassy character. Maybe that would age out of it. I'm not sure. Kind of, honestly, like, the rye is so prevalent and so active in there, 44%. I would probably taste that and think that's a rye whiskey as opposed to a high rye bourbon. It's very much like a kind of dilly, lemony MGP rye more than it feels to me like a high rye bourbon. Chris. Travis, you also have a sample of a batched version of the Old Dominic from Bourbon in the Barn. That bag might still be behind me right here. Give me one sec. Was it the Bottled and Bond, Travis? I think that's probably it. You may have given me I may have a bottle in the basement. It's so hard to tell. I have a sample. Like, this sample is a Bottled and Bond, same mash as same low rye mash. So let's just pour this out and see. We're about an hour and 12 in, guys. We're doing great. My saturation level. Listen, spitting whiskey. There's probably 5 ounces of whiskey in this that would have been in my body, as opposed to, take a few sips spitting and then taste the last sip. It's a much better way to do it. Wait, shit, did I? Fuck, it's got to be this one, right? It's got bubbles in it, so I probably just poured it. Crap, hang on. Yeah, that's the Southern Star. I think that's the MGP Southern Star. All right. The Bottled and Bond is, because it's that low rye mash, it has all those sweet fruit notes to it. But the edge has been taken off. Like the youthful... Yeah, the youth... Oh! I know what this reminds me of now. Yes. Okay. I said crispy caramel on the low rye. I said crispy caramel on the low rye pick. It smells like Mash Bill 2 Buffalo Trace. That is exactly... So, Mash Bill 2 is the high rye Buffalo Trace mash. Elmer, Rock Hill, Blanton's. Elmer, Rock Hill, Blanton's. What else is in Mash Bill 2? Hancock's. So there is a crispiness to that mash bill and a certain character that mash bill has to me. That is exactly what this Old Dominic has. The low rye mash. That note, when you proof it down to this Bottled and Bond version, is not there anymore. It's just sweetness. It's just fruit. However, I do pick up actually a teeny bit of a charcoal note when you proof it down, which is interesting. Weird. In a good way. There's a... Damn, that's so good. I'm an Old Dominic fan now. I don't think these two single barrels are like perfect whiskey by any means, but they show a lot of... Well, I think the best way to put this is that now I've seen so many different data points from Old Dominic. And I think if you went to do a barrel pick there, you'd probably be able to find something really cool. There's a note on the Bottled and Bond. It's more grapey, a little more jammy fruits. Soft, 100 proof only. Not a lot of spice going on that. But there's a kind of an industrial type note. It's not rubber. I'd have to think about what that note is. But it's different, and I think that's probably from the charcoal filtration. And maybe when you proof these products down, you can taste that filtration just a little bit more than when it's at barrel proof. And actually, I would definitely stand by that theory, because the really low proof one that I tried from Travis, the white label, which I think was the 88 proof, I think I do have a bottle of that in my basement. That whiskey, you could really taste the charcoal filtration on, I think. And if that's 88 proof, this is 100. I think as you add water, you also are going to add more flavor from that filtration. But listen, we're talking a price range, like Travis says, $40 to $60. You're in a price range where this is great whiskey in the price range. You guys are funny. You guys are funny. If you spit the Oakley later, that's probably a felony. Dustin said the bottle and bond is more expensive than the single barrel. Is that true? Still here and still can't believe you don't love the JD Rye. I do. You know which JD Rye I love the most, though, is the Tennessee Tasters from the distillery. The pre-special release one. Oh, God, that was so good. That was so good. All right, well, thank you again to the person that donated these bottles. And I'm glad I retasted them tonight, because I would have said much harsher things about them the night that I first tasted them. But again, maybe comparison is the thief of joy that night, because we had some pretty wild bottles on the table. Or maybe my palate was just more critical, or maybe I'm just a little soft tonight. Who knows? Well, yeah. All right. Clip that too. Travis, they also just released a single barrel of the Tennessee whiskey at 7 years and 137 proof. Wow. Maybe we got to think about calling old Dominic to see if they're open for barrel picks, man. Because at that price point, value's off the charts. Wow. Real quick, guys, 212 people in here. Let me just quickly, shamelessly plug a few things. Number one, please hit the like button. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you're new, whether you're watching live or on the replay. But do know this. This channel is for whiskey like dorks, and we've kind of gotten that reputation. It's probably why the channel is so small. Also, because I just never put content out. I bounce around between my day job and trying to be active in Patreon and doing barrel picks, and then I put a video out once every 2 weeks or something like that. There's good weeks and bad weeks, you know? But let me just quickly shamelessly plug the Patreon. We have grown so insanely fast, and for 11,000 subs on the channel to have 425 paid Patreon members is really cool, and it makes for amazing discussion in the Discord, actually. That's probably the coolest part of the Patreon is a Discord community. So if you $5, $10 a month are the only two tiers that are open. We have barrel picks dropping just about every 3 weeks, 2 barrels at a time usually, sometimes more when the scheduling gets off. And it's a great place to be. So I just want to shamelessly plug that. The link is in the description of the video. If you want to super chat tonight, support the channel, you can, of course, always do that. But I would rather you take that $5 or $10 and put it into the Patreon and see if it's a community that you really enjoy, and consider sticking around there for the barrel picks and for everybody else. People are so generous. They're just sending samples all over the place. And there's shenanigans that we'll talk about that we did in the Patreon. We'll talk about here in just a second, actually. But before we do that, I think we have one more comparison, one more side-by-side. Then we got a couple of one-offs, and then we'll talk about this 20-year Heaven Hill madness that I'm kind of referencing. You want to do a blind real quick? Let's do a blind real quick. Let's do a blind. By the way, these two bottles, Double Oak Brew Rye, 11-year MGP bourbon, those are dropping tomorrow in the Patreon, just so you guys know. All right, who mentioned me in their Instagram story? What's going on here? Oh, there we go. Oakley 20. There we go. I love it. Okay. All right. Let's do a blind. Just a one pour blind from Pink Dan. How many clean glasses do I have? All right, we're doing good. Get some fresh glasses for the next comparison. Oh, Joe was there for the short barrel picks. The short barrel picks, guys. The bourbon's insane. Double oak Rye. I don't even like double oak stuff. Here we are picking double oaks. It's like, is this going to be the year of the double oaked? I hope not. I thought that was like so 2023. 2024 was obviously year of the rye. There's no other thing that 2024 could have been. But what is 2025 going to be? The year of people making videos about the bourbon boom being over? That maybe that's what 2025 is. I'm, by the way, never going to make one of those videos. I think for any of us in the whiskey tube space, except for a few people that might actually have enough knowledge to make that video, for us in this space, we're like somewhat plugged into the industry, but also not really. We're also pretty tangential to the industry. And so to act like we know what's going on in the industry, when people ask me, what do you think is going to happen to bourbon in the next 5 years? I don't have a damn clue. And I don't care to think in those terms. Because me speculating doesn't mean a whole lot. There you go. 2025 is the year of 20-year bourbon. It just might be. But all of these came out at the end of 2024. So the year of bankruptcy. Let's change the freaking elevator music. Good God. Oh, here we go, Rizzle D. Who makes the Sealbox 10-year double oak 75 15 10? So, a couple things about that mash bill. I've heard a lot of different things. I've seen articles written claiming that it's places that I don't really think it is. But this is the takeaway for me right now, just across the industry, is we should all stop guessing about where things come from if we really don't know. And if we really don't have proof. Like, I'm going to tell you guys tonight that this is 20-year Heaven Hill. And that this is 20-year Heaven Hill. And that this is 20-year Heaven Hill. But I have confirmed that with people. I didn't sign the NDAs. They may have. But the word was already out anyways. That is 99.9%, I can tell you, 20-year Heaven Hill. The only thing that I don't have is somebody at Heaven Hill saying, yes, we distilled that, you know. But on the 75 15 10 mash bill that we're talking about, I've heard rumors that that's one of Buffalo Trace's bourbon mash bills, and that other distilleries have taken that mash bill and tried to copycat it. I have zero idea if that's true, so please don't quote me on that. But I've like read that somewhere, and I'm like, who knows? Who knows that? And is the person I'm reading it from someone that heard that secondhand themselves? Now, I have heard with pretty good certainty that at least Heaven Hill makes that mash bill. I do know that. Now, as to whether other Kentucky distilleries make that mash bill, I do not know. I've heard that Barton does. I have no idea if that's true. I've heard that it's a Buffalo Trace mash. Their stuff's not popping up on the barrel market, realistically. The Buffalo Turkey's a little different. But we don't see like a bunch of Buffalo Trace coming out from NDPs all over the place. We do see a lot of Heaven Hill. We do see a lot of Barton. My guess on that would be Heaven Hill, just based on what I've heard, but I have no idea if that's true. But I do know that at least Heaven Hill does make that mash bill. Oh, yeah. Austin, yeah, I took this and I shared this with some friends, and we completely killed this in one night. No, I mean, we probably started here, so we probably did about half a bottle. But they loved it. I'm glad they liked it. Okay, so let's do a quick little single pour blind. We might do another one of these before the stream's up. So this is from Pink Dan. The way this, this was in an envelope, and I gave it to my wife, Sarah, and I said, open this envelope and tell me what's in it. Like, is it a card that I can use? Is it a black note card? Is it a piece of paper? So she opened it, and she said, it's a card that you can hold up, flip open, and it's on white paper, and you can show everybody what it is. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll just open this and show you. I'll turn my head. I'll just make a couple guesses about this whiskey and see how close I get, all the normal things, I guess. I'll turn my head. Please, no spoilers in the chat. If this says Elijah Craig, don't start talking about Heaven Hill or ECBP or whatever else. You get the gist of it. So here we go. Turn my head. You let me know if it doesn't focus or whatever. So that is what we're working with here, whatever this card says. So let's do a quick little blind. All right, 3, 2, 1. All right. Put it here. Good color. Again, this is from Pink Dan. This is sample 18. I just randomly picked that card out of a pile. Ooh, smells good. Morgan, did they know they drank $1,000 of your bottle? They did eventually learn. They're kind of asking how much certain things cost. And I was like, yeah, I had the Pure Antique 20 there too. And it was like, yeah, it's like this much. And they're like, oh shit. It's like, no, it's cool. It's cool. The Believe is amazing. The Believe is awesome. I'm kind of waiting to hear back from Preservation. We're loosely talking about like what a barrel pick might look like, and I'm kind of waiting to hear back from them. Just curious, Their stuff can be expensive, so I want to make a smart choice. Did you guys see the card okay, by the way? Oh, you got it, Travis says. Okay. This smells great. This is like, well, it's like all those fresh berry notes that I talked about on the old Dominic. This has it, but in a totally not youthful way. It's very rich and kind of, I'm going to say it again. I think I just said it about something else. Jammy fruits. It smells great. I'm going to do it on the palate. Age, this could be 8 to 15. I mean, it could be in a lot of places depending on how this ends up drinking. So let's go to the palate. Oh, wow. Whoa. Is that like a George T. Stagg? Dude, I'm in like WLW or George T. Stagg land on that pour. The fruit notes make sense. The proof feels, it honestly drank a little light. Like I could see that being, the proof is is the confusing part to me. It feels like a WLW or GTS. Oh man, what does my gut tell me? I think proof is, it doesn't feel like an old one, So if I'm going to guess one of those two bottles, I'm trying to think about proofs of recent releases. I think I'm in George T. Stagg land. GTS. I'm thinking of other Buffalo Trace products at this. There's no way this is a Stagg Junior. If it's a Weller foolproof store pick, that'd be amazing. You could tell me that's Blanton straight from the barrel, though. I might believe you, Blanton straight from the barrel. I gotta just make a guess. I think proof 128. God. All right, I just gotta make a decision. Make a decision. It's hot. Let me take one sip of water. Why does this taste like GTS to me? So this is the thing. The nose doesn't say that. The nose... And remember on the nose, I was like, man, this could be like 8 to 15. Like, it could be a lot of different things. The palate felt better to me than the nose. Am I going crazy? All right, now I'm blowing my palate out. How hammered are you after these lives? Depends on the live stream. Tonight I've been spitting a lot. I just decided on this blind I'm just going to rip it and go for it. Sorry, just trying to think. But sometimes it's not good, and sometimes I can come off of these streams and be like totally cool. I think tonight is shaping up to be a night where I am drinking a lot less, which is good. I have a 10 a.m. rehearsal tomorrow morning, but there are some nights where it's really rough. I can't... Listen, I got to go first impression. First impression was GTS or WLW. And then I'm thinking, does it have that weeder profile to it? I'm gonna say this is a WLW. I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna say it is a... There's something it did to me on the middle of my tongue that made me think weeder on that sip. I'm going to say it's a WLW. I don't know. I said 128 proof. I don't know the years of these. Let's say it's a 2020. Let's see what it is. Are you serious? I hate my life because I talk so much shit about this batch. It's Stag Junior Batch 17. I'm going to crawl in a hole now. God. I would have never landed on Stag for this batch. What was the proof? Oh, 128.7. There we go. All right. And it's funny when I said it could be 8 to 15 on the nose, and then I'm literally at the end thinking about these older products when it ends up being the 8-year product, more or less. But when I started to second guess myself, it's because I wasn't picking up enough oak on the whiskey, and that's when I was like, oh wait, this, I don't know if it's GTS. Ripped it on the guess at the end, and the reason I went WLW is I was getting this particular grain note. The funny part about it is the grain note that I was getting was actually not the wheat being like the differential factor. It was the youth of this being a Stag Junior as opposed to a George T or a WLW being, 4 to 7-ish years older. So I confused those components, but the fact that you can confuse those, or that I can, at least in this instance, and think that's a WLW means that must be a pretty good batch of Stag. I talked a lot of smack about this. Now, when I did make my video on batch 17, I sat down and analyzed, like back in those days of the channel, I would sit with whiskeys for days and like think about them and write notes and study them. It was really overkill. And I think when you do that with some of these whiskeys, you can talk yourself in circles. And I've noticed that. Like, I go back and read some of the notes I wrote about, like Four Roses 2021 LE. I have a whole spreadsheet of notes that I had written back then. Some of it's just so overkill. I think it's better to just kind of not knee-jerk it, but give a quicker interpretation of the whiskey. Because some of the notes, I remember like two of the notes, the off notes that I said that this had, because I do think it has some off notes. One was fried chicken. I kind of smell it now that I say it. And one was latex. The fried chicken I will stand by in this. It has this like battered fried thing to it, to the caramelized notes in the whiskey. So there you go. All right, Pink Dan, tricky, dude. So Josh, great plug for me to make right now on this. On Tuesday night, I believe I can confirm this now. Yep. Tuesday, February 4th, 7 p.m. I'm going to do a blind of Stag because I've already done ABC from last year. Then I didn't know Batch D was coming out. So when that came out, my buddy Justin sent me not only a sample of that, but he also lent me his E.H. Taylor Batch 13, which we're going to taste tonight. I'm going to do a blind flight of all 5. A, B, C, D from last year, plus Batch 13 E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof, and see how they all stack up. KFC or Popeyes. What did I miss here? Devin, was batch 17 released when GTS didn't, and there was speculation that the reject barrels? I think that was batch 18 when that happened. I could be wrong, though. I could be wrong. I think Mike down here was saying it was 17. I'll believe anybody. I don't exactly remember. Travis says 18, so I don't know. Yeah, Frank, that's going to be not like a full live stream like this. It's just going to be one of those 30, 40 minute type lives. All right, we have another comparison to do before we do some one-offs. So let's do this now. I'm not sure if Tom's hanging out tonight. Tom Morrow from Limestone Farm / Limestone Heritage Distilling. Let's see here. I think I need some more glasses. Noah, Cam, any thoughts on Stag single barrels? I'm sure it greatly depends. Listen, Noah, I'm greatly inexperienced with those because, as far as secondary price went on those things, if I can't taste it beforehand and I'm trying to throw out like $400 on a pick, I think they've dropped since then, but I was just never prepared to do that. So the only one that I have is a hazmat pick that Toshi from live chat and Patreon and Discord and just a friend of the channel. Toshi donated we went to Willett together and did the tour. It was so fun. And he gave me a 140 proof Stag pick. I think it was 140.4. It's great, super hot, and I just don't know about the other picks. Travis. Okay, so this next comparison, I hope this is interesting for you guys. I have, since the summertime, just sung the praises of Limestone Farm's private stock. I've got 3 different batches with me. Got one literally right behind me, right there. All right, so that's 115. Yeah, 115 proof. I've got 115.5 in the basement, sealed. Ever since I went down there, I met Darren with Tom. It was amazing. And we're actually doing a Limestone Farms. We're doing our own custom blend for drums and drams of the private stock. It's going to be too limited, unfortunately. They don't have a lot of this to go around, so it's a super, super limited blend. And then we're also going to do a blend, I believe, of the white label, which we've got some interesting components to possibly use in that. We're doing that in March. And so anyways, that's really cool, and I'm jazzed about it. This private stock stuff, this is now pretty much public knowledge. It's been said on podcasts. It's been talked about. It's been written about. These are barrels that Mike Safai had distilled at New Riff for a wheat beer. So it's an interesting mash bill, 70, 10, 10, 10. There's honey wheat in there. There's corn. There's distiller's malt, and there's something else. And then they barreled it, and they made this whiskey out of it. So it's 8 years old. It's a wheated bourbon, technically. These are all about, 113 to 115-ish proof. This is 113.2, and I've loved it. Now, this bottle, the reason we're doing this comparison is because this bottle, Peter E. Hart, 112 proof. Wow, it is a single barrel, which I did not realize. This is a single barrel, 8-year, 112 proof. Apparently, this is the same distillate that is in the private stock, but at a much lower price. So then the gears start turning like, hey, can I get the same stuff? Is it just as good at a lower price? So let's look up the price of Peter Hart bourbon. Peter Hart bourbon, Liquor Barn, $122.99. Okay, let's look up Limestone Farm's private stock price. And Bourbon Outfitter has it now. So let's look at Bourbon Outfitter. $189 on Bourbon Outfitter. $185 elsewhere. But at Bourbon Outfitter, you can use either code CAM or some other ADHD or BJ. You can use a lot of different codes and get 5% off. So you're looking at $185 versus $125-ish. So $60 price difference. Let's see how these things compare. Let's look at the color. Color, pretty comparable. The Peter E. Hart's actually darker, even at the lower proof. Remember, these are single barrels. All right. And I'm going to pour out now the 115 proof from Limestone. So I'm going to get 3 of these going here. Why not? Let's do a little quick 3. Don't want to say that. Honey malted barley is the other grain. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, so the one, and this tracks, right? The 115 proof is a little bit darker than the 113.2. It's closer to the Peter E. Hart. All right, so let's go to the nose now. I'm going to reverse bottles to glasses here. All right. So what I notice as I just nose these kind of across the board, let me first talk about the general profile of this distillate. Number one, I absolutely believe that the Peter E. Hart is the same stuff here. It's the wheated bourbon, 8-year, new riff distilled, yada, 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 those Sophie barrels. Yes, I believe that. The profile of these, super dark and leathery, but I've always talked about these as having like these blackberry and blueberry and grape notes that are extremely stewed and like cooked down and reduced with a lot of like fresh leather notes. There's some tinge of a coffee thing, but to me it's in the background actually. I think these fruit notes take center stage. But it's such a dark profile, and it's so unlike anything else on the market. I can't tell you anything else that tastes like these. The first time I had it blind was with the Bourbon Junkies. That was the private stock, and it blew me away. So that's the profile. Now we're going to talk variations on the theme. So the Peter E. Hart is a very, very dark version of that profile, which is already very dark. But it feels one-dimensional. And this is a single barrel, so these are going to vary. There's kind of a graphite note to this, a little bit of like this, I don't want to say minerality because it's not quite that. But it's like a little peppery and more graphite forward with that super dark profile right behind it. So this is now the 113.2. And this is way fruitier. This is a little bit lighter, not only in color of the whiskey itself, but of the profile. You get to introduce a little bit of this burnt orange note that plays along with those berries. There's none of that graphite note. So the Peter E. Hart is more simplistic. This 113.2 is much more like varied and diverse in its profile, at least on the nose. And it is a blend. Like both of these private stocks will be blends, and this is a single barrel. So you're just getting a singular profile. Now let's go on to the 115. And the 115 is just silly. That's probably my favorite. Although the 113 is great too. The 115 is just so rich and like it's got coffee cake kind of notes to it. All right, so let's taste the Peter E. Hart now. Yeah, and that that graphite note is readily apparent on the palate of the Peter E. Hart as well. All right. It's good. Feels a little anemic. Like there's a lot of spice. More spice than I'm used to on this distillate. And not enough body to necessarily support it. Let's go to the 113 too. $113.2, much more complex. Yeah, fruity, complex, filled out, enveloping. Little drying. All of these are a little drying. That's kind of the nature of this. This whiskey is just a little bit dry on the back end. Okay. Let's do the 115 now. God, the nose on the 115. Weirdly, it smells less hot than the 113.2. It smells actually lower proof. Oh my God, yeah. Super leathery on the 115. Very much like more aged notes to that one. That's my favorite. So the Peter E. Hart, to me, at least this single barrel, yes, it's $60 cheaper, and you can tell it's the same whiskey, but it's more of an approximation of the profile, I think, than these limestones, which they themselves do vary as well between these different proof points in these batches. But they're much closer than the Peter Hart, which, listen, at $125, it's a good deal. As far as this profile goes, it's great that you can get this profile at that price as opposed to $185 for the limestone, right? I'll say that. But the limestone, to me, that's the profile of this whiskey, whereas this is trying to get there and it's not quite. So if you are on a budget, if 125 is budget, and you're looking for this profile, yes, pick that up. But you might pick that up, taste it, and then say, I want a little bit more from this. Then you go buy the limestone. But if you know that you just want to go straight to the pinnacle of what this whiskey profile is, you're just going to go straight to the limestone. And the limestones, for me, I have these as well, and I had these ready to go just to talk about. These are the same thing, the Safai barrels. This is his own brand, but these are $300 a piece. And they are also single barrels, just like the Peter E. Hart. But they're not... They're very distinct, barrels 2 and 3, which are the ones that I have. These limestones beat both of these, in my opinion. So, and they do it for $120 less. So I'm not just trying to hype limestone as the more expensive option. That's the most expensive option. And I say, go to the limestone. Peter E. Hart, if you're on that $125 budget, that's okay. But in this comparison, at least, it does feel a little bit anemic, a little bit extra spicy for what it is. Profile's dark. Really dark. It's kind of like a German chocolate cake with... I use that note on something else, on this Oakley, which we'll talk about. It's in a little different way. This is very like plummy in German chocolate cake, but not enough to support that that note. The profile doesn't have enough to give you to deliver that note in the right way. Would these be anything like the Rare Character Exceptional Weeded? No, those are West Virginia distillate, presumably from Smooth Ambler. Again, this is, take this with every grain of salt, because this is purely a rumor that I read, I think, probably on Facebook, is that Old Stubborn, back there, the gold label, which was batch 1, that was weeded pot-stilled bourbon from West Virginia. Presumably Smooth Ambler, but who knows? That stuff, being a weeded pot still, people were like, oh, that's probably the same as the weeded bourbon from West Virginia that Rare Character's getting. Someone told me that the Rare Character stuff is when they changed over to a column still. I don't know if that's true, if that's pot stilled and then the Rare Character is column stilled. I don't know, but that would be an interesting like delineation between the two, because the pot stilled version was super nutty from Old Stubborn, and then batch 2, which was not weeded, it was a rye bourbon, that was not nutty at all. It was really dark and rich. So I would be, I'd be interested to taste the Rare Character and see what it's like. If it's close to the Old Stubborn batch 1. Old Stubborn isn't Smooth Ambler. Too old. Smooth Ambler wasn't distilling then. Interesting. I've heard both of those things, Jesse. That's why I'm just like, I don't know. So that's why I'll always say, take it with a grain of salt, because I've heard all these different things about the Smooth Ambler theory on Old Stubborn. I just don't know, man. Adam says the exceptionals are 9 years, so you might be able to look into that a bit. What do you mean exactly, Adam, by look into it? What are the prices on the Rare Characters? All right, let's keep it going. Keep it moving. Plenty more whiskey. Hour and 53. We're going to keep going. We're probably going to be on for, it's going to be at least 2.5. 180 to 200. I mean, listen, Old Stubborn was 250. That was, I think, like 10 to 13. Each batch was a little different, but it was older, but not that much older. Maybe those barrels are just really expensive then. There was one on Shared Pour for 280. Ooh. Okay. Yeah, I mean, before I knee-jerk reaction, I've said that now a few times. Sorry about the knee-jerking. Before I have a reaction too quickly to some of the prices, I always have to ask myself, now that we're doing barrel picks and I talk to people about barrel cost at NDPs, sometimes they're just making their regular margin on stuff and the barrels were just really expensive. Then obviously it's on them if they want to make less margin or if they want to just not buy the barrels. I know that's an option. I understand that. But sometimes those are the factors in play. It's not always a brand marking up an astronomical amount. There you go, Gary. There you go with the comment. Listen, if anybody made the comment about jerking on the knee, it's going to be Gary Franchi, the world's worst bourbon channel. What's up, man? Morgan, I know what the barrels cost of the Heaven Hill 20, and I can't say that, but it's a lot of money. And so on the Heaven Hill 20 stuff, and listen, like I heard a number that happened. Different brands can get different deals from brokers sometimes, depending on the quantity they're buying, depending on their relationship, depending on if they know they're buying short barrels. Sometimes they can cut them a deal. There's just so many factors in those conversations, but the number that I heard makes a tingle go up my spine, because if you break that number down into bottle cost and you look at the margin that the distillery is going to take and then that the retailer is going to take, never mind a distributor, I'm just talking direct to like DC, like if we're doing Bourbon Outfitter, and you think about the margins that both are going to take, the price that you're seeing right now on the Heaven Hill 20s is the appropriate price for people to make their percentage, their margin on those. That's what I'll say. So when you see that 1,000 price tag, if there's highway robbery going on, it's not from the NDP and it's not from the retailer. The robbery would be coming actually from the distillery or the broker upcharging those barrels significantly. And maybe that's the motivation for a Heaven Hill, for instance, to sell those barrels to the broker is to make more money on them there than they would releasing it themselves under a $300, SKU, which is like what Heaven Hill 18 is. Maybe they're going to make significantly more by just selling that barrel directly to a broker to go to an NDP. I don't know exactly the broker's cost or like what they're making on the deal, but I think when we're talking pricing, people just need to understand, because I'm learning more and more every day, there are so many factors that go into whiskey pricing beyond just the distillery's fucking me or the retailer's fucking me. Like those are two very small parts of the entire thing. Average bottle yield, I've seen 100. The Watch Hill was like 104. 102. There was an Oakley barrel with 88. There was an Oakley barrel with 61. I've read somewhere it was 170 bottles between two barrels. I don't know exactly if that's true because that's not advertised, but so that may or may not be the case. But you're looking at like, let's say 75 to 90 probably on average range. Smooth Ambler started using the pot still in 09 to 10. Old Stubborn is 10 to 12 years, so it tracks. Okay. And I've heard that as well. The first Watch Hill proper was, like 30 or some stupid low number of bottles. But SRP was $2,500. And again, you break that down and you're like, yeah, it actually at that price point, based on that percentage, should be that cost. And I know people think like, well, then just don't buy it. But, yes and no. Justin said, don't make fun of 35 bottle short barrels, Cam. I'll never make fun of those. Those are my favorite. Those are the best. All right, what do we got to taste next? We've got this Leaper's Fork. Okay, I feel like I've gotten a million notifications on the phone. What is going on here? Oh, a couple new Patreon members. Thank you guys for jumping in. Appreciate it. All right. We got EH. What else do we have tonight? Leapers. I think that's it. And then the Oakley. All right, so let's do EH because and maybe we'll do another blind as well. If we do the Leapers is a very different profile. I've tasted it once, so I don't want to I don't want to do it before this EH Taylor. I want to do this one on a fresher palate. Speaking of tasting, when might we see some tasting glasses of yours? All right, so here's the deal. The proofs are in. So we got this one. We got this one. I actually kind of like this on the glass. That looks pretty. It's like a big logo. It looks good. So we got the circle logo. We got this. These are on Glenn's. And then this one, it's a little high up, but that's because of the curvature of the glass. It's hard to laser print on these going into that curvature there, which is pretty severe. But we do have cheater glasses. So very soon, Ben, the person that's going to be handling our glasses, just broke his leg, and so I'm leaving him alone right now. I might check in a couple of days and say, because I think he was going to have leg surgery and stuff to reset the bone, is what it sounded like. So I'm going to check in with him and see how he's doing. But that stuff's going to be available hopefully very soon. But I also have one more idea for these cheater glasses. Maybe it's not going to be on this first round, but I want it to say, and listen, if anybody steals this idea, then I said it here first, okay? I want it to say The Cheater Glass by Drums and Drams. So I want those to be made. I don't have a design for it yet, so I'd rather just rip it on these and then add those later. But The Cheater Glass by Drums and Drams needs to happen. Wow. Don't you have to change it to an Oakley logo? That's not part of the deal yet. Ben's going to crack his E.H. Taylor with me. Awesome. This is not mine, but thank you, Justin. Please do hit that like button, guys. All right, so batch 13, E.H. Taylor, barrel proof, 127.3 proof. We're on to the tater bottles, y'all. We are on to the tater bottles. Let's get the tube more in view. People scrolling by will see the tube, and they'll click on the video. Got to be smart here. Got to take everything we can get. Why is it called a cheater glass? I think, did Dan Shook come up with the name cheater glass? It's because I always beat his ass in blind flights. So he said that I use them and I cheat with them. Sorry, I'm just talking a little smack. Got to get ready for Matt Madness this year, you know? I don't. Morgan. So, okay, let me preface the E.H. Taylor quick review I'm about to do here. I am not an E.H. Taylor barrel proof. I don't want to say fan, but I don't have any knowledge batch to batch of E.H. Taylor barrel proof. I'm just so removed from this brand because it's not something I ever pick up myself. Secondary's always been at a price that I'm like, I've never thought the juice is worth the squeeze. $450, $500 is kind of where it had traditionally been. They've dropped since then, which is good. So I may start picking these up each year for the channel to do a review. But I don't have like a catalog in my brain like I do of Stag Jr. of the different batches and their profiles. So I think I reviewed 12 on the channel, probably off of a sample. And I remember enjoying batch 9 when it came out, but that was like in 2020, I think. So my palate was a lot different back then. Batch 9's a banger. Okay, so I really enjoyed it back then. So E.H. Taylor barrel proof, at least this batch, and it's the impression that I've had of other batches as well, the few that I've had, is that it's a little bit of a lighter and sweeter profile than Stag Jr. It's not as, excuse me, it's not as oak heavy. It's not as bittersweet as some Stag Juniors can be. It's not as fruit forward either, like dark fruit. It's a little bit of a lighter profile overall. This is more in like a buttercream territory for me. Like the top note, the main thing that I pick up is like a buttercream. Yeah. It's something like a peach cobblery, butter creamy, kind of a candy shop thing going on here. That candy shop vanilla and strawberry candies and stuff like that. But it's definitely brighter. I don't pick up on this batch really any like dark fruit notes. It's you could convince me that there's a little bit of the Buffalo Trace grape way in the background. And if there is, I'm not going to argue with you, but it's not the primary thing that I get. It's all of this buttercream sweetness. Maybe after the palate and I come back, it'll change, but let's see. It drinks good. It does drink very good. Huh. I don't know what to think about that. It's got a funk. It's got a funky buttercream thing. You know what? I just had like a total deja vu moment. I think we talked about that funk. We did a Patreon, like the top tier, the $50 tier. We do a Zoom call every month. I think someone told me that this had a funk to it on the Zoom call. And I just got the funk again. There is some sort of funk in here. And it relates to that buttercream note. Yeah, it's like I'll say this sometimes. It's like you took something and left it out in the sun and it kind of turned a little bit. It's like you took buttercream or like a milkshake or something, or sometimes I'll say root beer float. This is not root beer, but I'd say like a vanilla milkshake or like buttercream, and you went out in the sun and it kind of melted a little bit and it got weird. It has a note that I talk about on some Stag Juniors, which is kind of like that fresh croissant, fresh baked, bakery note. This has some of that too. It's like kind of more caramelized. Sounds like a cheater note, but it's not. The bakery thing is real here, but it's just bright. Now it drinks really well. It's intense. I wouldn't say it's enveloping as so much as it is like kind of spicy and direct. Is it my favorite? No, not really. This is more of a mood pour for me. I would absolutely need to compare this to other E.H. Taylor barrel proof batches. I'd probably take a really solid batch of Stag Junior over this. Are they going to drink as intensely? Maybe not. Like this, I do like the palate on this, but the profile is a little bright for me. It's a little bright for me. So what would I like? This relates to the video that circulated today, right? What would I pay for this? Not secondary. And there are plenty of bottles that I do pay secondary for. The way that this drinks, this is like a 150 to 175 at the top end. That's taking into account its rarity and a lot of things. It's right around what I would pay for a Stag Junior, on secondary. If it's a good batch, or if I'm trying to get the batch, trying to get a batch first before other people and make a review, I'll pay up for that. I'll pay 150, 175. But I wouldn't be mad about having this whiskey. It's very good. I'm not going to go to it every night because it's a little bit of that brighter profile. Ben, okay. All right, Ben. You're right. You are right. Wow, I didn't realize 22A was 132.2 proof. What's up, Dustin? Dustin, we're about to get to the Oakley, bro. So you don't like it? Not that I don't like it, Lynn. It's like the crust of a creme brulee. Yeah, there is some note in this, Ben, that, I hate to say this, feels youthful to me. It again, just like the funk relates to the buttercream, the youthful thing that I'm getting kind of also relates to the buttercream in here. So let's do the comparison to. Listen, I've said that I love 22A. I also haven't had it in a long time, so let's see how it stacks up. Yeah, 22A all day on the nose. Oh, it's so dark, so fruity, so dark. It's surprisingly, at the proof, not as explosive on the palate as the EH. It's weird that the EH Taylor drinks hot. And actually, it's coming off now. I don't ever really get this on Buffalo Trace products. It's more of an MGP thing. Also Brown-Forman, depending on the product. I'm getting like a yeastiness now off of, I talked about the baked bread thing, but now it's coming off a little bit yeasty on the EH Taylor. You get none of that on Stag 22A. I'm taking Stag 22A, even though the palate is more relaxed at a higher proof, strangely. I'm taking that over the EH Batch 13. That's purely based on my flavor preferences. If you just want something to like kind of light you up, let you know it's there, EH Taylor, sure. But this being probably what, 180, 200 on secondary, this is like 350 or 400. The choice is very, very clear. If you're buying this at the marked up price, it's this all day. John, Cam, can you tell me what's so bad about the 23B? What makes it that way? Just how good are the others? So, John, it's kind of hard to... Number one, I do remember not liking it as much. I'd have to go back and see what I said to reimagine it. If I recall, it felt overly spicy. I think it had some bitterness, coffee bitterness to it, and maybe felt... I may have used the word anemic for that as well. Like it had spice without support from the flavors. And the flavors that it did have were maybe more bitter. I'd have to go back and watch my video, but that's what I think I remember off the top of my head. What I would say to you about it, John, is like... Okay. John, will you email me? drumsanddrams@gmail.com, and I'll send you a sample pack of the stags that I have. I don't have that many of them. I have 22A, 3A, 3C. So you can do the whole 20. No, sorry. Let me roll that back. I have 22A, 24A, 24C. And if I have enough in my samples of 24B and 24D, I'll send those as well. Because the best way for you to see where I'm coming from on that is to just do the side-by-side comparison yourself. It's kind of hard to describe it if you're not actually doing the comparison. So just please email me, drumsanddrams@gmail.com, and I'll send those to you. I had a similar reaction to 22B also. All right, let's keep moving. John, just make sure you send me your address in the email so I can get that out to you. All right, one more one-off. And then we're going to get into the Oakley Spirits talk. Wow. Yeah, man. John, anytime. So, Sam, I know you were correcting yourself to Brett. You're terrible. But John jumped in here and didn't have the apostrophe. I thought you were correcting John. It's like, how dare you, Sam? All right. Leaper's Fork. This is M-Town Brown, Volume 1. I think it's a single barrel cask strength, 70 corn, 15 rye, 15 barley. Barrel entry 110, so a great barrel entry. This bottle yielded 174 bottles. 6-year, 10-month. 110 entry proof. It came out at 111.2, so just a very slight increase. This is their own distillate. Okay. I love this on the back. I love the provenance of this. Like 100% mashed, fermented, distilled, matured, and bottled by Leaper's Fork Distillery. I love that. The specificity is great. The whiskey's super dark. And if there's 174 bottles, it's a 700 ml bottle. Cool. If there's 174 bottles coming out of this, this must have been a full-size barrel. Their logo is a pot still, so this is probably pot stilled, although who knows? All right. The most prominent note I get on this, I got to remember, Leaper's Fork. I got to remember this. I always want to say J. Rieger because of the IE combination. It's pot stilled, okay. 6-year, 10-month, Phil. The primary note is a very, very strong cheese note. Like, I know it's like a meme for us at this point to talk about cheese notes in whiskey with Drums and Drams because of Funky Monkey. There's a strong cheese note. It's like sharp cheddar, but it's been sitting out for a while, you know? It's like Iowa Legendary Rye, if you've ever tried that. Behind that, very like dark and syrupy in a savory way. So there's like grilled meats. It's a little Ardbeggy in that way. Yeah. Grilled meats, green pepper spice is what I'm getting. Black pepper, freshly ground black pepper. It's just a super savory whiskey. The more I smell it, the more I like it because the cheesiness and the weird, funky top notes, they fall away as you acclimate to them. But when you first smell this, it is a shock to your system. It's got that Texas whiskey feel to it. Wow. It's crazy because, like, front, mid palate, all of that, it's like burnt ends, all of those savory notes, a little soy saucy in there. Then you get into the mid to finish, and all of a sudden it tastes like sugar cane. Like there's this ramp up of sugary sweetness at the end after all of this, symphony of savory flavor. Weird. So in that way, it's kind of disjunct. I actually would prefer that this just stuck with the savory flavors from front to back the entire way. Then you would kind of be able to classify it a little bit easier in your head of like, well, I either want to drink it or I don't want to drink it. It's not my jam. It's interesting, but it is not my jam. So I think what would be cool would be to taste a higher proof version of that, to see if maybe a higher proof would help rein some of those crazy notes in, or if it would just it could just make them even stronger. That is about as funky as a whiskey gets, you know? Yeah. Okay. I think it's that time. 2 hours, 20 minutes. Let's do it. Let's talk about 20-year Heaven Hill. So got some stories to tell you guys about what the hell happened here. They're fun stories for me. I think this is a clean glass. All right. Let's drink Oakley out of the Drums and Drams glass. I will not be spitting this one out. Frank, does Triangle Players include access to barrel picks? Frank, it does, but there are like 250 people in the $10 tier, something like that. So it's very often things will make it to the $5 tier. But recently the channel has grown a lot and the barrel picks have become more in demand. So if you're looking for picks, this is not me upselling you. I promise you that. If you're looking for picks, your best bet is to get in the $10 tier. And it's still not guaranteed there. Things that are really competitive, people are going to be waiting with their mouse and their keyboard, waiting to get in when things drop. So it just depends on what you're looking for. Okay, so Oakley Spirits. I'll just give you guys some backstory, and if you've heard this already in the Patreon, I apologize for repeating myself. I heard about all of this 20-year Heaven Hill. I say all of this. I think I've been able to, like, put my eyes on bottles from 6 different barrels at this point. I know that some barrels were sold from a broker at some point for a very, very high price tag. Yields have been all over the place from about 30 to about 100. And I heard about it and I was like, that's totally crazy. It's probably something that certain NDPs are going to get and it's never going to even show up publicly. Like, I just figured, well, they probably have enough friends to sell these barrels out amongst themselves and it's just kind of like a collector's thing. And the first one that I truly saw and was intrigued by was the Watch Hill proper, and that's because Matt Porter sent a sample of this to me. So this was in a blind flight. It ended the blind flight. I think I already knew about the 20-year Heaven Hill at that time, but I never thought I would taste it. So when he sent this to me and it was in the blind and it was incredible, I was like, I have to get a bottle of this. So I tracked this down for a stupid amount of money, and I picked it up. Justin got one as well. It's incredible. To me, I said it was my favorite whiskey of 2024. It was so good. 124.1 proof. And then from there, I actually ended up seeing the press release of Oakley on Fred Minnick's website. I went to their website. I saw it on their website. I saw the initial sale they did on Baxis, which is a new marketplace. But I just didn't know anything about the brand. And I was like, well, I just can't pull the trigger on this. If I don't know who picked these barrels, it's really hard for me to pull the trigger at $1,000. Now, listen, $1,000 is what the going rate is for all of these 20-year Heaven Hill bottles. And I know that's an obscene amount of money for a lot of people. So I'm not here to be the I don't know what the word is, like pretentious, highbrow. I'm not trying to be like that about these bottles and be like, oh, it's $1,000, but it's good, you should buy it. I am not saying that at all. It's a significant amount of money for anybody. But what I am saying is, when you compare the quality of these 20-year Heaven Hills to other things on the secondary market and what their price tags are. For instance, if you put these in a purple top bottle, a Willet bottle, you're going to charge a lot more than $1,000 for these things, right? And people are going to pay for it on secondary. My point is, keep that in mind as we go through this, that these are all about $1,000. That is retail, like SRP from these different places you're getting them. So the Oakley had a press release that went to Fred Mennick and went a few other places. I saw it. I went to the website, probably on my phone, which is where I would normally do this. And on your phone, you enter your date of birth. I was like, I don't know what's going on here. And I clicked the shop tab and I saw it $1,000. And I'm like, I know that the price is pretty much what it is, but I don't know who picked the barrel. I saw 122 proof on the picture. And I know the Watch Hill's 124. And you always look for those higher proofs, of course. You know, the tater in us is doing that. But on Baxis, this certain marketplace that Oakley released their first batch or first barrel under, there was a 129 proof bottle that went out. And it said sold out. And so I thought the entire barrel was sold out. Well, I read somewhere later, somebody posted it in our chat, that only the first 20 bottles sold out on Baxis. And so supposedly the rest of the barrel was still being sold on their website for $1,000 at 129 proof, which is higher than Watch Hill. So one of our Patreon members purchased one, sent me a message and said, dude, I got the 129 proof from the website still, after thinking that it was sold out and they were selling the 122, because the website was not very clear, admittedly, right? So he got the 129, which I thought was gone. I had seen a 129 pop up on secondary for cost, $1,000. So I picked it up. His bottle arrived when my bottle arrived. So I got mine that morning, which was this past Saturday. And he texts me and he's like, dude, mine's also 129. And I got the 129. And I'm like, I thought you ordered from the website. Shouldn't it have been 122? I know this sounds like it's in the weeds. So I popped the 129, and this thing is insane. Insane. It's so good. It's so good. And it's very expensive. But I told people in the Patreon about it, and everybody started ordering this bottle because they realized that it's probably the 129 that they're going to get. So they started sending emails saying, I want to confirm it's 129. I want to confirm it's 129, not the 122. And Oakley was emailing back saying, yeah, it's 129. So we sold the rest of that barrel out very quickly. I don't know how many were left. It wasn't a ton, but we sold it out. Then, after we sold out the entire rest of that barrel, I'm emailing with Molly, who owns Oakley. She sent me an email, and I had said, hey, listen, like a bunch of our people just kind of, from Drums and Drams Patreon, just like attacked basically, and we bought the rest of that barrel out. I said, I probably owe you an apology for all the emails that you got about people asking about which barrel they were going to get. She's like, no, this is awesome, and we're going to drop another one here very soon, like another thing. We didn't know if it was going to be 20 year. So then they drop at 100. They drop 136 proofer, and we blitzed that thing too, which is crazy. And we didn't probably sell the entire thing out, but we probably did most of the damage. It was a 61 bottle barrel. We probably did most of the damage on that, which is not something that we should be proud of. That means that we all have problems in our Discord and our Patreon. But we got the 136er. Now, what happened was the day that the 136er dropped, Molly emailed me, again, the owner from Oakley, and said, hey, listen, I overnighted you yesterday samples of some other barrels. Please taste them and share your results with us. Send us your tasting notes and tell your your Patreon group what you think of those barrels as well. So in that sample pack was the 136 proof that we had all already ordered earlier that day, panic ordered. Then I tasted that night, which was like 2 nights ago, I think. Or was it yesterday? I don't even know. It was this week. I taste the 136. I taste a couple other 20-year barrels that they sent that are yet to be released. And they're insane. They're insanely good. So it's become a meme in our group now, this whole Oakley thing, because we've like foamed at the mouth for it. Now, when you get on the website, listen, fair criticisms of the website. I know that Jason talked about it on his stream last night, but he did have to backtrack a little bit, right? Because he's like, well, maybe the whiskey's really good. He's like, I'm sure the whiskey's good. It's 20-year Heaven Hill. That's correct. The whiskey is insanely good. I don't know who picked these barrels. If this was luck of the draw, that's insane. I can't imagine that's the case. I would think that somebody picked these, and whoever did it did a damn good job. Some of the best whiskey I've had. Like, no joke. Sorry, I'm not looking at the chat right now. I just want to get through this monologue. But yeah, fair criticisms on the website, right? Like, the website is very marketing forward, and I actually hadn't looked at the website on a desktop computer. Like, I hadn't scrolled through it and looked at it. I do this all on my phone, and I just Apple Pay for my phone. So I saw that you type your date of birth in, and then I saw like some flashing images on the front page, and I would just click shop and go to this page and order the bottles. That's what I would do. So yeah, you get on the computer and you see all this like heavy marketing stuff. Fair criticisms, right? It feels a little disconnected from the kind of common whiskey consumer. Now, $1,000 bottles are not necessarily marketed to the everyday consumer. They're marketed to a specific audience, but that specific audience still resonates more with, more of a transparency type marketing scheme, as opposed to, I don't mean scheme negatively, strategy, as opposed to a marketing strategy that is just like lifestyle and vibe and, kind of that thing. But fair criticisms of the marketing on the website. However, the whiskey is unbelievably good. And I think a company like Oakley, which seems to be a very small operation, very new operation, will probably listen to feedback from consumers and probably change things along the way. So instead of like spending my time right now criticizing the website or other aspects of it, I'm going to talk about the whiskey. So we're going to taste this 20-year now. Aspirational, says Sly. That's a funny word for that. But yeah, I could see it. So I want to talk about the whiskey. I'm talking, kind of back and forth. I've had a few emails with different folks at Oakley. I think it was really cool they sent those samples, and I was able to taste through and see kind of what's coming. Ridiculous. I'm not paid to say this. I know they sent me 20-year Heaven Hill samples, which is kind of a payment in and of itself. Totally get it. I promise you, even before those samples were sent, I was raving about this bottle, which is 129 proof. So I want to be totally like clear about all of this. I did not get an apron, Morgan. I think the aprons are coming soon. I'm not an apron person, so I can't. I cannot comment on the quality of the apron. I don't know about the apron. That is funny though. The apron thing is funny. Like, that's more of like that lifestyle item, And it's like, I'm not into Oakley for that aspect of it. I'm just not. I'm not into any brand really for that aspect. I'm just in it for the quality of the product, I get it. I get what they're trying to do. And I get it, especially if they're coming from that marketing background of how they think probably they need to access a group of people by having that like lifestyle vibe. But I think the whiskey enthusiasts that are really going to want those bottles, some of them are going to be like into that, but most of them are probably going to be the true nerds that want that 20-year Heaven Hill, that want to talk about the whiskey first. Yeah. So we did mob them. By the way, we tallied it up so far on our Patreon, and we are responsible for 79 of those bottles being sold out of an 88 and a 61 bottle barrel. So that's 149 bottles. We're responsible for at least 79 of those, which is crazy, and that's degeneracy at its finest. Okay. All this to say, don't judge a book by its cover. And I saw these bottles go up because, like I said, I saw the Fred Minnick press release early on. And I was like, I just don't know anything about it. And then I saw it on secondary, the bottle that I thought I could never get, which was the first release that I thought was sold out. And once I got it and tasted it, that was a $1,000 gamble on my part. It was like, holy mother of God, this is insanely good whiskey. Ben, they are dropping more barrels. Yes, they've got one more coming. I think the details, go on the website. I think the details are releasing like February 8th, and then the bottles are dropping a week later. Yeah, the other barrels that I tasted, one of them in particular, insane. Nope, it's Jason says Kentucky Straight on the front. Right there. All right, so let's talk about this now. It's easy to cast stones and throw stones at stuff like this. It's really easy. But the whiskey, you know, I'm in this for the people, and I'm in this for the whiskey. Great whiskey and great people. That's what I'm in this for. This is checking off the great whiskey box, and I'm getting to know the people at Oakley. And I think we're gonna have a phone call next week about some things, and we'll see if that happens. If it does happen, that would be really cool. Yeah. Phil, I don't know how many barrels they have. I've now tasted 4 separate barrels of stuff that they have that were 20 years old. All right. So on the nose, this smells like German chocolate cake. It's so classic Kentucky. It's super oaky. German chocolate cake. There's a hint, like a little supporting note in here of a mixed berry compote, but it's more in the background, I think. The German chocolate cake and the super intense oak, not over oaked, and the leather notes, those are the main things that I get on the nose. That might sound simplistic or like obvious. No, I put this next to Heaven Hill 17 and it completely crushes it. So if that's, and it's way darker profile than Heaven Hill 17. Yeah. So everything I talked about on the nose, front of the palate is that this super intense chocolate note, but immediately vanilla cream pops in, extremely aged whiskey profile. There's no real ethanol burn to this at 129 proof. It's all flavor, which is the sign of a great barrel at this age. Oh my God. Like, realistically, having tasted the other barrels, some, higher proof, the 136, some of the other ones as well. If I had never tasted those whiskeys, I would tell you that this is about as perfect as you can get as far as whiskey on the market these days that's being released right now. This is about as perfect as it can get. Like, yeah, you get your King of Kentucky, which is great. This is a little more of my flavor profile than King of Kentucky. That sounds crazy to say. This is going to kill your pappies, Those are a different experience, but this is about as close as you can get. And the fact that this sat around, I know it was $1,000, but the fact that it sat around for a few weeks is pretty mind-boggling to me. And I think it's because people didn't know what they were looking at. Now, the 136 proof that we just kind of decimated a couple days ago, that one, it's a little less chocolatey, a little less rich. It's more oak forward, but there's also more cherry, more fruit. It's funkier also. you can make the argument that it's better than this, but some people might prefer this one. Again, it's about as close to perfect whiskey that's on the market right now as you can possibly get. I'm not going to say it's perfect. Nothing's perfect. But it's about as close as you could possibly hope for. It's fucking crazy. Aside from Watch Hill and Oakley, any other brands you know with 20-year Heaven Hill? Right here. Very old St. Nick, 20-year. It's called Believe. It's still in their gift shop as of, I think, a week ago. I'm not sure about right now. That's $1,000 as well. It's 118.4 proof. It's at a slight proof disadvantage from these others. However, the profile is super dark on that. Even though the proof is lacking a little bit, comparatively, the profile is very dark. It's kind of like this 129 at a lower proof. So that's a preservation. But these are really the only ones that I know of, at least right now, that have the 20-year Heaven Hill. It's crazy. Morgan, no, so it says final release, and that is in their what they're calling their collector's edition #1. Again, like, as much as they're doing the marketing for these things, they're not as clear, I think, as they maybe need to be about what does collector's edition #1 mean. You know, are they going to set an expectation at the beginning of these editions as to how many bottles are in the editions and what you might come to expect? That stuff I think that they need to work on. And I think they've realized also along the way from probably 50 emails they've gotten from people in the Drums and Drams Patreon about which barrel number am I getting, which proof am I getting, you know, that they need to be more specific about those things on their website. And they've made some like small adjustments so far. I think they'll probably get better at that. There's always a learning curve with these things. River Roots had learning curves with their drop process on their releases as well. So I have sympathy and empathy for that. But they're going to do one more in their Collector's Edition 1, and then I think we're going to get to something else, whether it's Collector's Edition 2, whatever's going to come after that. And they have filed a label with the TTB for a 13-year Kentucky Straight Bourbon as well. And I believe that to be Heaven Hill for a few reasons. But I think it's probably Heaven Hill also. So who knows what they're sitting on. But it sounds like some good stuff. And I have inquired about a barrel pick. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I hope that we can get on the phone and discuss it. Lynn said they should drop the price to $500. They would lose money at that price. They would actually lose money at that price. Lofty says, just tuning in. Hope it's been a good stream. It's been a great stream, actually. Long stream, but on my end, saturation level is great. Like, not feeling overly intoxicated at all. And that's because of the old spit bucket. But that's the thing, Josh. Like, I'm with you. Like, listen, people are going to go on secondary. They're going to walk into a store and they're going to see that Pappy on the top shelf. They're going to have a moment of weakness and they're going to spend $2,000 on it, you know? I can tell you this whiskey is going to smack that stuff around and it's $1,000 off their website. Now, who's to say, like, yes, they could raise the price. I hope they don't. I really hope they don't, because it feels like, I don't want to say goodwill necessarily, but it feels, because I know that these barrels are super expensive, I feel good as a consumer if I'm okay with spending $1,000 on any bottle, that I'm going to spend it on this bottle based on the stats, now based on the profile, and based on like you're not overcharging me to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for it. Because I think if they went up in price, they're not going to sell these the same way that they're going to sell them at $1,000. You know. I wish I had a discount code, Dustin. Frank, I wish I had a Michter's 20 to compare it to. I don't know. Morgan, so when is a clickbait 5K blind happening? Soon. Very soon. When my 136 proof comes in, I'm going to do a blind of Watch Hill, Believe, both Oakleys, and I've got an extra blind sample somebody sent me that he said I should include in it. Even if it doesn't compare to them, I think it's worthwhile to include it. I don't know what the sample is, Sarah's the only one that knows. So I'm going to throw that in there and just see whatever it is at the end of the blind. Great question. If you continue to buy all the bottles at release, why would they do a barrel pick? My thought is that they probably don't have like a ton of 20-year barrels that they're sitting on. Maybe they do. Who knows? But if they don't, maybe if we did a barrel pick, it could possibly be something else. Like they have that 13-year label filing. Maybe it's a 13-year Kentucky bourbon. Yeah, because we went crazy on these first two releases. Brett says we know Heaven Hill 17 loses, but add it. I could add it. Buy a sample of Michter's 20. I should get my hands on some 2024 and do a review of it. I could throw it in there. Probably going to be an expensive sample, but probably worth it. I need to find a reliable source for that sample, though. So there you go. I think that's it. And by the way, these are the samples they sent of the other ones, which again was really cool. Like they didn't ask me. They had my address from the order I placed, and they just overnighted them. I thought that was pretty cool. Morgan, video idea is 2 to 3 years extra worth $700 more. Heaven Hill 17 or Heaven Hill 18 versus these. It's a good video idea. I have like the smallest smidge of Heaven Hill 18 left. But realistically, Heaven Hill 17 is not $300. It's $1,000 to $1,100 on secondary. Especially because it's not, it was released a few years ago. So if you count those things, where like this bottle is still at SRP on the site at the same price as Heaven Hill 17 is now on secondary, it's not even close. If you put Heaven Hill 17 down to $300 and you say this is $1,000, you can make a case you might want to buy the Heaven Hill 17, but it's not that realistic. It's a tough thing because it's so imaginary, I think, at this point. What did Andrew say? I'm very glad to see you utilize a spittoon. Any serious industry taster utilizes one. Makes me believe in you even more. Well, Andrew, I haven't traditionally done enough of that, and I'm trying to do a little bit more of it these days. I've been to portfolio tastings when I was in the wine industry, and no one drank the wine when tasting. No one. There's too much to taste, and it's your duty as a buyer to taste as much as you can. Yeah. I think we need a little bit more of that in the whiskey world. It's much harder for me to taste whiskey when spitting as opposed to tasting wine. And that's just the ABV level of whiskey is so much higher that when you spit it out, it just burns on your palate more. Whereas wine, it's just much less of that. You can get more of the flavor and more of the full experience, I think. But with whiskey, when I do spit, like when I'm doing a barrel pick and I'm spitting, I can generally eliminate the things I need to eliminate by spitting and actually just smelling. Like most of my decisions are made on the nose up front. And then when you spit, you can learn a little bit more about it, but you can narrow things down, and then I'll start to actually taste at the end. Ben, I haven't tasted the drops publicly. I don't think there was a big need to taste them publicly for the short barrel stuff. It's in the Patreon. And if people are interested, I would hope they would join the Patreon, not just for one drop. So there's tasting notes in the Patreon, But I'll tell you now, the Rye, maple chocolate, bacon donuts, and the MGP bourbon 11-year is super fruity, and it's like spiced fruits with one funky off-profile note that I can't figure out. And the proof point is great, 119. So yeah, Andrew, so for me, like you're talking about taking micro sips, I have a really hard time with palate development and finish. I can get a lot of flavors off of really small sips, but I don't get the full experience of like the ramping up and then the slow decrescendo on the finish. I don't get that accurately enough to talk about it on really small sips. So the spitting for me is to get the front of the palate, the flavors, the mid palate, kind of the spice profile too. And obviously you've nosed it ahead of time. And then when I start to actually sip, then I'm extra focusing on how it develops and then how it finishes. Man. All right, so I think this was a great stream. Let's go crazy. Let's end it with one more blind. Why not? 2 hours 51. Let's get to 3. Let's do one more blind. This blind, however, I don't think I can show you ahead of time because let's just do another Pink Dan blind. You guys can see because he's got the cards made. You can see what I'm sipping on. Let me grab one. It's just right behind me. I have a clean glass. All right, cool. All right, so I grabbed Pink Dan Random Blind number 14. Let's do one more blind. Just say, is it worth 500 more than a 24 GTS? It's so hard to say. They're completely different whiskeys. To me, yes. I have not purchased a 24 GTS. I have purchased a couple of these. So, yes, it's worth it. This is my favorite whiskey profile that still exists because old, B barrel Willets are not made anymore. My favorite profile nowadays that you can still get your hands on is Old Heaven Hill. So this is my pinnacle whiskey. And I paid $1,000 a couple times over for some of these. All right. Pink Dan Random Blind number 14. Let's get it in the glass. We'll end the night after this 20-year epicness with a little blind tasting. All right. So remember, no spoilers in chat. What are you guys saying? Midnight blind. It is a midnight blind. All right. Dustin, Cam, you need a beard. Okay. I'll get right on that. All right, here we go. This is what's in the glass. Please, no spoilers. Let me know if you need to see this again. Sorry, I'll put the mic here. Let me know if you need to see this again. No spoilers. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Okay. All right. Smells like MGP. Smells like MGP weeded. It's in that flavor pocket for me on the nose that has that yeastiness to it. And this will confuse me in blinds. I'll go MGP. Sometimes it's Barton. Sometimes it's... there's another one that this can be. Oh, shoot. I can't remember. But the yeastiness can be a few different places. This really, really smells like MGP weeded or just young MGP, like maybe 21 rye bourbon. I just don't like the yeasty note. And like sometimes you have 8-year MGP that any other day or in any other situation would smell much older, but then you add that yeast note onto it. And I don't know why certain runs of these barrels had that note. And it makes it all smell young, no matter the age of the whiskey. All right. Now, besides that, though, I'm actually getting like some good, like I get pineapple. I get a little tropical fruit. Not uncommon for if this is MGP. And then I also get a little bit of like a spiced plummy kind of thing. All right. Oh, the proof is lower than I thought. I thought it was going to be spicier than that. It's like 112. Little metallic note on the nose. What's up, Matt Porter? What's up, you yeasty beastie? What's up, bitch? Let's go. Good to see you, man. Hey, Matt, are you streaming tomorrow? It actually has some good age to it. And disproportionate fruit on the palate as compared to what I thought the nose was showing. Disproportionate fruit. Could it be finished? And if so, is it a subtle finish? Extra age. So to me, this smells and tastes like a 6, 7, 8 year MGP because of the yeast note. But is it older than I think? If it's finished, if it's older than I think, MGP. It's well constructed. Kind of a lower proof, though. Is it a Magnus cigar blend? One of those like batches that I'm not the biggest fan of. I'm not convinced that it's finished, but Magnus, like Nancy, does a great job at integrating the finish. Huh. I'm not convinced. Ugh. It's got to be MGP. I'm going to just do it. This could be a lot of things. I'm going to say it's 9-year MGP, 112 proof, bourbon, finished cigar blend. Wow, okay. All right, so Old Elk. It's a pick. It's a 7-year 112. Isn't that the proof I said? 112? 112.7. It's a straight wheat. So straight wheat whiskey. It's MGP if it's Old Elk. So it's not finished. It's not finished, but yeah, it's got that yeast thing that I'm not the biggest fan of. Interesting that they got so much fruitiness out of this on the palate. Dude, wait, didn't I say it smells like freaking weeded MGP at the beginning? No! I second-guessed myself. Oh my god. I literally said that. Holy shit. Come on, Cam. Dude. Crazy. All right, so I don't feel that bad about this. I just was trying to talk myself into something to make sense of the fruit notes, and maybe it was the wheat that did that, but... Oh, Matt. Sick, dude. You got a Knob Creek cask strength pick. That's awesome. All right. Well, fun way to end this this 3-hour live stream. Thank you guys for hanging out. Hit the like on your way out. Please consider joining the Patreon if you haven't already. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate all of the people for making tonight possible. Justin, this EH, an unnamed person for the old Dominics, the Peter Hart, I think that's what it's called, Southern Star. So many awesome pours from him. Oakley, I'm very excited to see where Oakley goes. All this 20-year Heaven Hill is amazing. Short barrel drop tomorrow for the Patreon members. Nashville Rye was awesome. Nashville Bourbon was a little lackluster for me. And I think that's it. So, thanks, guys. Really, really appreciate you being here. And absolutely, I will talk myself out of the right answer every time. Pisses me off, man. Cheers. And I will see you guys soon. I probably won't be streaming for a couple of weeks. Got night rehearsals. One next week, and then the next week I have a Thursday night concert, which is kind of weird. We're doing West Side Story, fully staged with the ballet and the opera. I'm gonna be playing. Let me say that sentence again. I'm gonna be playing drum set in the pit. So, rehearsal next week at night, concert the next week that night. So I'll try to sprinkle in some like Tuesday night lives with focused tastings to kind of make up for that. And then I think in 3 weeks, I'll be back on a dedicated Thursday night live stream. And more content, I promise. I've got a crazy blind flight to do. I have Watch Hill Proper Batch 1, the hazmat one, but it's in a blind flight with other things. So I don't know which one is going to be Watch Hill Batch 1. Maybe I can pick it out, maybe I can't. William F. sent that my way. And so that's going to be a video, not on a live stream. Cheers. I'll see you soon.